Chapter 2188. Murongyu, you go first. Don't worry about me. Just when Murongyu was in a dilemma, Hundan's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Of course, Hundan sent a voice transmission directly to Murongyu's ears. He would not be so stupid as to roar out loud. Murongyu was still in a dilemma. However, after hearing Hundan's words, he instantly made up his mind. He would not leave. If he were to leave, he would leave with Hundan. After all, Hundan was risking his life to save him. Murongyu clearly saw that Hundan was at a disadvantage after this period of battle. If this were to continue, Hundan would definitely be defeated. Of course, there was another possibility. That was, Hundan would give up suppressing the evil force in his body and be controlled by the evil force. In that case, Hundan could explode with all his combat power and turn the tables. Moreover, Hundan, who was controlled by the evil force, might even start a massacre. By then, with Hundan's ability, no one from the Soul Clan could stop him. He would be invincible. However, according to Murongyu's speculation, Hundan would rather be defeated than give up suppressing the evil force. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suppressed it for so many years. Hundan, get out of the battle quickly. I have a way to bring you out. Murongyu was anxious, and he quickly sent a voice transmission to Hundan. Get out of here right now. Don't drag me down. I have a way to leave. Hundan was furious, and he scolded. However, Murongyu was not angry because of that. He knew that Hundan was doing it for his own good. However, he did not believe that Hundan could leave the Soul Clan's territory alone. If he were to leave, the four Laozu would definitely find a scapegoat to vent their anger on. That scapegoat would be Hundan. Today, none of you can leave. Stay in the Soul Clan. At that moment, a cold voice suddenly rang in Murongyu and the others' ears. At the same time, an extremely strong and dangerous aura suddenly shrouded Murongyu's heart. Even Murongyu's soul trembled violently. Danger! It was a great danger. Murongyu was shocked. With a thought, he was about to enter Hichu Luo Shu. But in the next moment, he was shocked to find that he could not enter Hichu Luo Shu at all. Let alone Hichu Luo Shu. He couldn't even move a muscle. He was rooted to the spot. It was only an extremely cold aura that held him in place. A Downlord. Moreover, it's comparable to Hundan at its peak. Murongyu thought. At this moment, a figure stepped out of the void and appeared in Murongyu's sight. This was a middle-aged man with a pale face and no beard. His face was grave and stern, and his eyes flickered with a soul-stirring, cold light. Murongyu shuddered involuntarily. This middle-aged man was quite dangerous, an extremely dangerous person. It wasn't the icy cold aura that emanated from him that made Murongyu shudder. It was the terrifying killing intent contained within the icy cold aura instead. Murongyu had never encountered such a frightening killing intent before. Merely the killing intent was sufficient to make him shudder. This middle-aged man was simply like a god of slaughter. Since he was able to make an appearance in the territory of the Hun clan, then he was probably an ancestor of the Hun clan. However, Murongyu had already met 4 Downlord Realm ancestors. If this Downlord Realm ancestor and Hundan were included, then wouldn't the Hun clan possess 6 Downlord Realm ancestors? Exactly how many Downlord Realm ancestors does the Hun clan possess? Their strength is truly too terrifying. Ancestor Hun, The 4 ancestors who were in battle with Hundan immediately stopped fighting when they saw the middle-aged man, and it was even to the extent that they retreated explosively and pulled apart the distance between them and Hundan. On the other hand, Hundan didn't continue attacking. He bowed to Ancestor Hun instead. It seemed like Ancestor Hun possessed a very high status in the Hun clan. Even the 4 ancestors had respectful expressions on their faces. Hundan, do you know your crimes? Ancestor Hun nodded lightly to the 4 ancestors, and then he gazed at Hundan and spoke coldly. A wisp of rage flashed through the depths of Hundan's eyes. However, he didn't flare up because this obviously showed how high Ancestor Hun Yi's status in the Hun clan was. Hundan doesn't think he's guilty. Moreover, Murongyu has rendered meritorious service to our Hun clan, so he shouldn't suffer such humiliating treatment. Hun Dan was the #1 genius of the Hun clan, so he naturally had his own pride. So, even if he really respected Ancestor Hun, he still expressed his stand in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. A wisp of ghastly killing intent flashed through Ancestor Hun Yi's eyes, and it caused the hairs on Murong Yu's body to stand on end. Hun Dan, how dare you? Ancestor Hun Yi was furious. At the same time, he took a step forward and slapped his palm on Hun Dan. Hun Dan was extremely furious. He roared loudly and smashed his fist forward. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, Hun Dan was directly sent flying. In the end, he spat out a large mouthful of blood with a puff sound. Murong Yu clearly saw that the evil power on Hun Dan's body was becoming more active and dense. If Hun Dan continued, he would lose control. However, Murong Yu wasn't worried about Hun Dan's loss of control. Instead, he was worried about the strength of this Ancestor Hun Yi. Originally, the 4 Ancestor Hun Dan was at a disadvantage when they joined forces. However, this Ancestor Hun Dan was severely injured the moment he attacked. His strength was too terrifying. Hun Dan was furious and wanted to get up again. However, Ancestor Hun Yi slapped him again. Therefore, under Murong Yu's furious gaze, Hun Dan was directly suppressed. Ancestor Hun Yi glanced at the other 4 Ancestor Hun Dan and said coldly, "Throw him on the cliff of reflection. Ask him to come out when he's made up his mind." Yes, Ancestor Hun Yi. The 4 Ancestor Hun, they didn't dare to disobey Ancestor Hun Yi at all. Murong Yu didn't know Ancestor Hun Yi's background. However, they were very clearly aware of it. Ancestor Hun Yi was absolutely like a god of slaughter. It wasn't just to outsiders, it was even to members of the clan as well. If they got on his bad side and were killed by him, they wouldn't even know how they died. It was the same even if one was an ancestor at the Downlord realm. Therefore, the 4 ancestors took Hun Dan and left in a submissive manner. However, the reluctant gazes they shot at Murong Yu before they left caused Ancestor Hun Yi to feel displeased. When they noticed that Ancestor Hun Yi was displeased, the 4 of them didn't even dare say a word and left swiftly. After they vanished from his field of vision, Ancestor Hun Yi took a step forward and vanished on the spot. Of course, Murong Yu wasn't left behind. When he appeared once more, Murong Yu noticed that he'd arrived at a gloomy and cold hall. The hall was completely empty, and there was only a gloomy and cold aura within it. It was similar to Ancestor Hun Yi's aura. This was probably Ancestor Hun Yi's hall. Murong Yu, right? I'm aware of what happened to you. You've rendered great service to the Hun clan, so I ought to reward you. However, even though you've saved the Hun clan, the experts of the Hun clan fought each other because of you, and it almost caused the experts of the Hun clan to perish. That's enough to make up for your crimes. When he spoke up to here, Ancestor Hun Yi frowned and pondered deeply for a moment before he continued. How about this? I won't cripple your cultivation, and I just have to wipe away your memories of the Hun clan. You'll be able to regain your freedom. Murong Yu's heart was filled with rage. He wanted to curse old Ancestor Hun Yi, if he could, that is. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when Murong Yu sensed an extremely formidable strand of soul energy pierce into the space within his soul. Ancestor Hun Yi had actually attacked. The flames of rage in Murong Yu's heart were simply monstrous. However, right when Murong Yu thought that Ancestor Hun Yi intended to read his memories, his soul energy had stopped moving forward. Murong Yu clearly noticed the shock on Ancestor Hun Yi's face. Shock, disbelief. After that, it swiftly transformed into pleasant surprise. I'm finished. Murong Yu was shocked in his heart because he knew that Ancestor Hun Yi had noticed the unusual state of his soul. It's actually a member of the chaotic race. I never expected that the chaotic race still exists. Ancestor Hun Yi had a complicated expression on his face while he was excited. Will he come over and devour my soul? At this moment, a strand of strong anticipation had suddenly arisen in Murong Yu's heart. If Ancestor Hun Yi intended to devour his soul, then would the violet light within his soul destroy Ancestor Hun Yi's soul, just like it had destroyed Hun Xian? Even though Ancestor Hun, he was much stronger than Elder Hun Xin. But they were both at the Downlord realm in the end. The violet light should be able to destroy him, right? Murong, you start to worry about his gains and losses. If the violet light within his soul was able to destroy Ancestor Han Yi's soul, then the benefits Murong you would obtain were obvious, and it would be extremely terrifying. But if the violet light was unable to destroy Ancestor Han Yi's soul, then it would be a tragedy. Murong Yu's body would be seized. That was something he was powerless to resist. Supposedly, the members of the chaotic race have an extremely high chance of becoming the legendary Downlords, and they might even become the strongest existences that control the heavens and the earth. What if I'm able to seize his body and supplement it with Soul Devour? I'll definitely be able to break through to the Downlord realm and even become the strongest existence in the heavens and the earth. At the same time that all sorts of thoughts flashed through Murong Yu's mind, Ancestor Hun, he had suddenly started roaring with laughter. Come, let's fight to the death. One of us will die. Murong Yu had gone mad in his heart. However, he revealed a wisp of panic on his face. He seemed to be extremely terrified. Kid, I've changed my mind. I'll make you become the strongest existence in the heavens and the earth. Ancestor Hun, he roared with laughter as he'd already torn apart the space within Murong Yu's soul, and his entire soul charged in. Murong Yu gazed at Ancestor Hun Yi's soul with terror on his face. His heart was filled with extreme anticipation, yet he was also slightly uneasy. Swoosh! Ancestor Hun Yi's soul, which had attained the 9th rank of the Downlord realm, bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards Murong Yu's soul. Swoosh! Right when Ancestor Hun Yi's soul approached Murong Yu's soul, a dazzling violet light suddenly erupted from Murong Yu's soul. Chapter 2189. Swoosh! Hun, he didn't even have the time to react before he was struck by the violet light that had suddenly appeared within Murong Yu's soul. With a crack, old Ancestor Hun Yi's soul shattered into pieces. However, there was a reason why Hun Yi's strength and status in the Hun clan was formidable. At the very least, his strength had been temporarily promoted to the Downlord realm, so he was much stronger than Elder Hun Xin. After all, Elder Hun Xion's soul had been obliterated by the violet light that came from Murong Yu's soul, and he didn't even have the time to react. On the other hand, only Hun Yi's soul had split into pieces. What's that? My soul. Right after his soul split into pieces, Hun Yi's shrill cry resounded. At the same time, Murong Yu noticed that Hun Yi's soul had started to move swiftly, and they approached each other and were already leaning against each other. They seemed to be on the verge of fusing into a new soul. However, there seemed to be an invisible barrier that was separating his soul from pieces. No matter how Hun Yi moved his soul fragments were still unable to completely fuse together. However, Murong Yu noticed that the invisible barrier had started to gradually weaken under Han Yi's attacks. It seemed like it wouldn't be long before Han Yi would be able to break through that barrier and completely fuse his soul fragments into a complete soul. The violet light was actually unable to directly annihilate Hun Yi's soul, and that made Murong Yu feel extremely worried, because he couldn't control the violet light at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to worry about Han Yi at all. If he couldn't kill Han Yi in one go, then what about twice? If he couldn't kill Han Yi in 2 tries, then he would try 3 times. He would still be able to kill Han Yi in the end. At the same time that he was thinking about it, Murong Yu had gathered all the energy of his soul and executed numerous myriad waves of soul that smashed madly towards Han Yi's soul. Moreover, he had focused all of his attacks on one of forefather Han Yi's soul fragments. Murong Yu removed it deeply. With the huge gap in strength between him and Han Yi, he was unable to destroy all of Han Yi's soul fragments. So, he had no choice but to destroy them. Even though destroying a single soul fragment wouldn't be able to kill Han Yi, it would weaken Han Yi's strength, right? However, the gap between Murong Yu and Han Yi's strength was too huge. All of his attacks were only able to destroy a small portion of Old Ancestor Han Yi's soul. He was unable to harm Old Ancestor Han Yi at all. You actually possessed such a secret ability. However, I'll kill you. I'll destroy you right now. Old Ancestor Han Yi's sinister voice resounded throughout Murong Yu's soul space. His soul fragments had already taken the initiative to attack Murong Yu's soul. Han S attack T kill S to 2's to kill S to kill to Han to T2's a huts. S Han's soul S is Han's Han hunted Han's soul Han test to Han Ts. Therefore, when Hani attacked, Murong Yu's soul began to tremble. It was because he sensed danger. Murong Yu was shocked. If Han Yi attacked him, he wouldn't be able to stop him. Therefore, he launched a frenzied attack. However, it only slowed down Han Yi's attack a little. Whoosh! In a split second, Old Ancestor Han Yi's attack had already reached Murong Yu's soul. Just as Murong Yu was cursing in his heart, and Han Yi was feeling smug whoosh. A purple light shot into the sky from Murong Yu's soul. A terrifying pressure instantly pressed down on Han Yi's soul. Old Ancestor Han Yi felt a pressure that came from the depths of his soul, fiercely pressing down on his soul, making him feel like he had to submit. Even though he was extremely unwilling, he couldn't get rid of the feeling of wanting to submit. It was as if he was born with it. The Murong Yu before him was like an indomitable giant that made him want to submit to him. Han Yi couldn't understand why he had such a feeling. Why did he feel like he was submitting to Murong Yu? Of course, all of this happened in a flash. In an instant, the purple light had shone on Han Yi's soul. An intense, tearing sensation came from Old Ancestor Han Yi's soul fragments, almost causing Old Ancestor Han Yi to faint. Then there was an extremely shrill scream. Poof! 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 Murong Yu clearly saw that Han Yi's soul began to melt under the purple light's attack. Han Yi's soul fragments began to retreat as he screamed. It couldn't be helped. The purple light was too terrifying. Although Han Yi was powerful, he still couldn't resist it. What a pity! A look of pity appeared on Murong Yu's face. Although the purple light was terrifying, it still couldn't directly destroy Han Yi's soul. It should be able to do it if it happened a few more times. However, Han Yi had already retreated to the edge of the soul space, as if he was about to escape and return to his physical body. Facing the purple light in the depths of Murong Yu's soul, he was really afraid. At this moment, he temporarily dismissed the idea of continuing to devour Murong Yu's soul. However, at this moment, Han Yi's expression suddenly changed. Although his soul had been shattered into pieces, his expression could still be seen. It was just incomplete. Little bastard, what did you do to my physical body? Han Yi roared. This was because when his soul wanted to return to his physical body, he realized that his physical body had disappeared. His soul couldn't even sense his physical body. There were only two possibilities for this to happen. The first possibility was that his physical body had been destroyed by Murong Yu. The other possibility was that his physical body had been sealed and kept in Murong Yu's treasure space. The only thing Han Yi could think of was that his soul had been destroyed by Murong Yu. After all, he originally thought that he could completely devour Murong Yu's soul. Therefore, he didn't care about his physical body at all. But who knew that the result wasn't so? Seeing Han Yi's flustered and exasperated look, Murong Yu couldn't help but sneer. I'm really sorry that I didn't tell you before. Your physical body has been destroyed by me into millions of pieces. Old Ancestor Han Yi flew into a rage, wishing he could slap Murong Yu to death. However, he stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move. Devour Murong Yu's soul? He was afraid of the terrifying purple light. If this happened a few more times, his soul would be annihilated. What if he left Murong Yu's soul space? He was just a soul fragment. Without a physical body, how could he survive? Possession? It wasn't impossible to take possession. It was even to the extent that Han Yi dared to guarantee that he could even take possession of the bodies of Dao Lords. However, after he took possession, the new body and soul wouldn't be very compatible. In this way, it would cause his strength to decline greatly. Would anyone be willing to transform from an extraordinary expert into an ordinary cultivator. So, Hun Yi didn't want to take possession. Even if he wanted to take possession, he wanted to take possession of Murong Yu's body. So, even though Hun Yi was slightly afraid of the purple light in the depths of Murong Yu's soul, however, he was still slightly unwilling to leave just like that. Otherwise, he would be entirely capable of leaving Murong Yu's soul. As for Murong Yu, because he couldn't control the purple light, so was very uncertain. So, he didn't dare touch Han Yi for now. So, both of them were in confrontation within Murong Yu's soul space. Both of them stared at each other, yet they didn't dare make a move. Actually, both of them were thinking of a way to annihilate the other. However, they were unable to find an effective method in the end. I wonder how strong I'll be able to bring forth once I take control of Han Yi's body. Will it be able to help me? Murong Yu pondered in his heart. He hadn't destroyed Han Yi's body because it was the body of a Tao Lord. It was extremely strong, and it was extremely useful to him. If he was able to refine and absorb it, then wouldn't Han Yi become his slave or puppet? At that time, Murong Yu would have an extremely important figure in the Han clan. It was even to the extent that he could use Han Yi to regain control of the Colossus that was the Han clan. Murong Yu didn't know that Han Yi's thoughts had already taken him to be a member of the chaotic race. He seemed to have firmly believed that he was a member of the chaotic race. This thought had appeared naturally, and it was even to the extent that he hadn't noticed it. Even though the purple light is strange, it's very likely that it's a treasure that little bastard obtained by accident. So long as it's a treasure, then that little bastard's strength is probably unable to activate its might for a long time. Perhaps that little bastard is only able to use it twice? Hun Yi gazed at Murong Yu while his eyes flickered and emanated traces of cold light. Right, that's definitely the case. Otherwise, why would he stand in confrontation with me and not attack me directly? After such a thought appeared in his mind, Hun Yi quickly confirmed it. Swoosh! In the next moment, he immediately launched an attack. A soul fragment shot towards Murong Yu's soul. This time, Hun Yi had learned his lesson, and he didn't attack with all of his soul. In this way, even if his estimation was wrong, he would only lose a portion of his soul and not all of it. Murong Yu was slightly perturbed as he gazed at Hun Yi, who was attacking him, because he didn't dare guarantee that the violet light was still there. In an instant, Hun Yi's soul fragment had charged over to Murong Yu's soul. Swoosh! Strong and dazzling violet light appeared once more. Hun Yi's heart shook while a bad feeling arose from the bottom of his heart. Pooh! Hun Yi watched helplessly as his soul fragment near Murong Yu's soul was struck by the violet light. After a muffled sound, the soul fragment was annihilated from his sight. Chapter 2190. The moment Patriarch Han Yi's soul fragment was annihilated, a huge amount of soul energy surged into Murong Yu's soul. At the same time, there were a large number of memory fragments. This was the special ability of the purple light. After annihilating the opponent's soul, it would automatically absorb the opponent's soul energy and memories and turn them into its own. Rumble, as expected of one of the most powerful patriarchs of the Soul Clan. After Murong Yu devoured Patriarch Han Yi's soul fragment, his soul realm, that was originally suppressed at the third level of the Heaven Realm, could no longer be suppressed and directly broke through. Fourth level of the Heaven Realm. Murong Yu was shocked. Originally, he could continue to improve. This was because Han Xion's soul energy had not been completely devoured. However, he did not continue to improve. This was because that would cause his foundation to be unstable. Now that his cultivation realm was forcefully increased, his foundation would become unstable. That was why he was shocked. However, he quickly discovered the difference. Although his cultivation realm had been increased, his foundation did not become unstable. He was even surprised to discover that Patriarch Han Yi's soul energy was also consolidating his cultivation realm while increasing his cultivation realm. The effect was even better than him consolidating it. Therefore, although he quickly broke through to the fourth level of the Heaven Realm, his foundation was completely stabilized after the breakthrough. There was no unstable foundation at all. Moreover, just like Hun Xion's soul energy, Patriarch Han Yi's soul energy was also increasing Murong Yu's cultivation and physical body while his soul realm was being increased. Rumble, a series of sounds like beans being fried, continuously came from Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu's cultivation and physical body had both broken through and reached the 4th level of the heaven realm in one fell swoop. This speed was really not an ordinary speed. However, it was precisely because Patriarch Han Yi's soul energy had increased Murong Yu's soul, cultivation, and physical body realm that he had consolidated. Therefore, Patriarch Han Yi's soul energy was quickly depleted. Although it had only increased Murong Yu's cultivation realm by a small level, it was already enough to make Murong Yu very happy. Originally, his combat strength had already reached the 1st level of the initial Dao realm. Now, it had reached the 2nd level of the initial Dao realm. Moreover, this was not his final strength. After the breakthrough, Murong Yu could clearly feel it. His soul and power could fuse with more vortexes. The more vortexes there were, the more terrifying Murong Yu's destructive power was. Destructive power was combat power. The more destructive power was terrifying, the stronger the combat power. Old Ancestor Han, he watched helplessly as his soul was destroyed. At the same time, Murong Yu's cultivation increased. Even a fool would understand what was going on. Of the Han Yi's soul energy, of Murong Yu's soul energies, soul, this made of Han Yi's. He Han Yi's, Murong of Han Yi, Han Yi's, of the S. Of ofs, or was it because Murong Yu's soul was threatened that the purple light would counterattack? Yes, that must be it. Patriarch Han, he was enlightened. However, he still thought that it was Murong Yu's treasure. He did not know that the purple light came from the depths of Murong Yu's soul. It was in his soul. Was it an innate ability of the chaotic tribe? My strength has increased. I wonder if I can control the purple light to attack. Murong Yu thought to himself. He had already begun to try controlling and attacking the purple light. Swoosh! A purple light flashed in front of him. A purple light the size of a pinky tore through the void and bombarded one of Patriarch Han Yi's soul fragments. This was Murong Yu's soul space. He was the master of this place. Therefore, Patriarch Han, he did not even have time to react. His entire soul fragment was hit by the purple light. Crack! A clear and resounding crack resounded, and then the soul fragment was directly obliterated. An extremely enormous strand of soul energy surged swiftly into Murong Yu's soul, and it was mixed with a huge amount of memory fragments. Little bastard, don't you dare! Patriarch Han Yi's face had turned livid, and he started cursing loudly at Murong Yu. At the same time that he cursed madly, he even swiftly withdrew the soul fragments so as to prevent himself from being blasted apart again. However, he still hadn't left Murong Yu's soul. Yu refused to give up. On the other side, Murong Yu roared with laughter. He hadn't expected that he would actually be able to control the purple light to attack after breaking through a realm. If the purple light possesses such terrifying might, then would anyone be a match for him in the future? Even if they were Dao Lords, they would still be crushed to death by him. Swoosh! 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 Strand after strand of purple light ceaselessly shot out violently from the depths of his soul under his control, and they tore through space as they smashed madly towards Patriarch Han Yi. Patriarch Han Yi's soul almost left his body, and his soul fragments swiftly teleported within Murong Yu's soul to avoid Murong Yu's attacks. However, where could he hide within Murong Yu's soul? There was nowhere to hide at all. After a few breaths of time passed, a few more soul fragments had been blasted into powder, and they transformed into Murong Yu's strength and memories. However, Murong Yu's attacks had slowed down at this moment. It wasn't that he wanted to slow down, and he wanted to kill Patriarch Han Yi. However, it couldn't be helped because Murong Yu was quite exhausted right now. Even though he could control the violet light, he couldn't release it without limit. Every single strand of violet light consumed his mind, and the consumption of his mind was extraordinarily huge. So his mind was swiftly exhausted after he successively released a large amount of violet light. At this moment, he was unable to continue releasing violet light. Moroni was puzzled by this. His mind hadn't been exhausted at all when his soul had been forced to release violet light, but it consumed so much when he took the initiative to release it. Moreover, there was a huge difference between the violet light he released actively and passively. The violet light he released actively was only the size of a little finger. However, the violet light he released passively was like a pillar that held up the heavens, and it illuminated a myriad of kilometers. Recover his mind. While he was in confrontation with Patriarchon, Moroni made the best use of his time to recover his mind. Every single time he recovered a certain amount of his mind, he would take the initiative to attack. After doing this a few times, Patriarchon Yi's soul fragments had suffered a huge amount of damage and obliteration. His strength had suffered a huge loss. However, Patriarchon Yi noticed a pattern. Finally, after Moroni stopped attacking once more, Patriarchon Yi roared with laughter. "Ha! Little bastard, you can't release violet light anymore, right? Now I'll end you. I want to see what kind of treasure can release violet light." Amidst his wild laughter, all of Patriarchon Yi's soul fragments charged madly at Moroni. Moroni's face revealed a look of shock and horror. However, he was sneering in his heart. In a split second, Patriarchon Yi's soul fragments once again charged at Moroni's soul. They were about to pounce on Moroni's soul. At this moment, a dazzling light shot out from the depths of Moroni's soul, instantly annihilating Patriarchon Yi's soul. "Ah, little bastard, you lied to me." Patriarchon Yi let out a shrill scream. His soul fragments, which had already been severely damaged, began to be destroyed under the illumination of the purple light. Of course, Patriarchon Yi wouldn't give up just like that. He began to charge madly. Finally, Patriarchon Yi charged out of the violet light. However, there was only a small piece of his soul fragment. The remaining soul fragments all became Moroni's power, increasing his soul, cultivation, and physical realm. Whoosh! Patriarchon Yi's soul fragments turned into a ray of light and tore through the void, tried to escape from Moroni's soul space. However, at this moment, a violet light the size of a pinky finger tore through the void and shot over at lightning speed. Boom! Before Patriarchon Yi's soul could escape from Moroni's soul space, it was hit by the violet light and was annihilated. However, at the same time, he heard Moroni's mocking voice. "Old man, all's fair in war. All's fair in war." Yes, when Moroni knew he could control the violet light, he began to use it to attack Patriarchon Yi. Even though his mind was completely exhausted, he didn't stop attacking. Every time he had enough mental energy, he would continue to attack with the violet light. This created a false impression for old ancestor Hun. Moroni, you couldn't control the purple light attacks limitlessly. That was why Patriarchon Yi dared to attack Moroni. Little did he know that Moroni was waiting for him to take the initiative to attack. This was because when the soul was in danger, the violet light would automatically appear and kill the enemy. The violet light that appeared passively was extremely terrifying. Therefore, Patriarchon Yi died under the violet light's attack in the end. Whoosh! Moroni heaved a sigh of relief. This time he was going all out. This was because he didn't know if the violet light would appear every time when his soul was in mortal danger to protect him. If it didn't appear, Moroni would be in trouble. His body would be taken over by Patriarchon Yi. However, he succeeded in the end. Should I break through first or refine Patriarchon Yi's body? Moroni sat cross-legged on the ground and pondered. After devouring Hun, Xin, and Patriarchon Yi's souls, Moroni could raise his cultivation level to a higher level. However, Patriarchon Yi couldn't wait. After all, he already had all of Patriarchon Yi's memories. However, it would take time to create a Patriarchon that was the same as the original. I'll refine Patriarch Han first. There'll be plenty of time to raise my strength in the future. Morong Yu finally decided. This was because only Patriarch Han could save Hun Dan, who was suppressed. Hun Dan was sealed in the Soul Tribe. Would he be able to suppress the evil power in his body? Chapter 2191. Hun Rong and the other elders stood at both sides of the hall, while Hun sat upright on the seat of the host, and he gazed coldly at the four ancestors within the hall. Hun Rong was one of the four ancestors that Murong Yu had met earlier. However, even though they were all ancestors of the Hun clan, there was a huge difference in status between them. For example, Hun could sit upright on the seat of the host. On the other hand, Hun Rong and the others could only stand at both sides of the hall. Murong Yu didn't devour Hun Xian's soul, so he doesn't know the secrets of the Hun clan at all. So, I've already spared him. At the same time, from today onward, Murong Yu will be a great contributor to our Hun clan, and we can't treat him unfairly. It's even to the extent that we have to place emphasis on fostering him. We strive to make him a genius like Hun Dan. Even though our Hun clan has developed well in the recent years, we lack geniuses like Hun Dan. Hun Rong and the others exchanged glances and still felt slight disbelief. However, since Hun had spoken, then what could they do even if they didn't believe him? Moreover, since Hun had decided to place emphasis on fostering Murong Yu, so they couldn't even set their sights on Murong Yu. Otherwise, who knew if old ancestor Han had placed some sort of restriction on Murong Yu's body? If Han found out about it, then perhaps he would kill them on the spot. It wasn't like Han hadn't killed the ancestors of the Han clan. Have all of you noticed that Han is slightly strange? He seems to be much weaker than before. He's even inferior to us? The four ancestors exchanged glances before they spoke via voice transmission. The other three ancestors nodded lightly. They'd noticed that Hun was different when they entered the hall, because Hun was truly too weak. If they weren't in the territory of the Hun clan and hadn't noticed that Hun was exactly the same as Hun from before, and even his aura hadn't changed. They even wondered if this Hun was the same Hun from before. A peak Downlord. Presently, Ancestor Han didn't even possess a strength at the Downlord realm, and his strength was inferior to any one of the four ancestors present here. However, although the four of them were more powerful than Forefather Han, they were still quite weak. However, he did not have any strange thoughts. Although these people harbored evil intentions, they didn't dare to have any ideas about Forefather Han Yi's power. Moreover, Forefather Han did not have anything that they coveted. All right, I made some mistakes during my training a few days ago, resulting in some problems with my strength. I need to fix it. By the way, Hun Dan didn't do anything wrong. You can let him leave the reflection cliff. After a while, old ancestor Han waved his hand tiredly at the four great ancestors, indicating for them to leave. The four old ancestors suddenly understood. It turned out that there was a mistake in his cultivation. Otherwise, why would his strength drop so much? Thus, the four of them left the hall without any suspicion. Murong Yu. When the four of them appeared at the entrance to the hall, they saw Murong Yu walking towards them. The four ancestors instantly stopped moving, and all of them gazed at Murong Yu with gloomy and indeterminate expressions. On the other hand, Ancestor Han Rong even shouted coldly. Murong Yu stopped as well, and then he grinned at the four ancestors. The smile on his face was brilliant. But who knew? The four ancestors hadn't noticed that a wisp of cold light had flashed through the depths of Murong Yu's eyes. On the other hand, ghastly killing intent had arisen from the bottom of Murong Yu's heart. The four ancestors had once wanted to crush Murong Yu, and they even wanted to devour Murong Yu's soul. That had aroused killing intent in Murong Yu's heart. Of course, the thoughts of the four ancestors were the same, but they didn't dare make a move against Chunshi now. At the very least, not only could they not target Murong Yu on the surface, they even had to place emphasis on fostering him. So it's Murong Yu. We've wronged you. If you have any questions about cultivation in the future, you can ask me, said one of the ancestors with a smile. Han Rong and the other two also smiled at him. Of course. I hope that the four ancestors won't be stingy with your guidance in the future. Murong Yu's smile became even more brilliant. However, he was laughing coldly in his heart. Even a pig wouldn't believe the four ancestors' words, let alone Murong Yu. After exchanging a few pleasantries, both sides bade farewell. Han Rong and the other three quickly left to release Han Dan, who was suppressed in the cliff of reflection. As for Murong Yu, he pushed open the doors to the hall and walked in. Clang! After Murong Yu entered the hall, he closed the door. At that moment, Ancestor Han Yi, who had been sitting on the main seat of the hall, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale. In fact, Murong, you could even see his aura churning like a tidal wave. It was incomparably chaotic. Murong Yu's face changed slightly. He took a step forward and appeared next to Ancestor Han Yi. At the same time, he reached out his hand and grabbed Ancestor Han Yi's shoulder. Rumble, a huge amount of power and soul power quickly flowed from Murong Yu's hands into Ancestor Han Yi's body like a torrent. After receiving Murong Yu's power and soul power, Ancestor Han Yi's chaotic aura gradually stabilized. His pale face gradually regained some color. Whoosh! After a while, Murong Yu waved his hand and Ancestor Han Yi disappeared from the spot. The moment Ancestor Han Yi disappeared, Murong Yu also disappeared from the hall. When they appeared once more, they were in Hichu Luo Shu. Yes, the current Ancestor Han Yi wasn't the original Ancestor Han Yi. The original Ancestor Han Yi's soul had been devoured by Murong Yu a long time ago. The current Ancestor Han Yi was only Ancestor Han Yi's body. However, his soul wasn't Ancestor Han Yi's, and it was Murong Yu's soul clone. It turned out that after he devoured Ancestor Han Yi's soul, Murong Yu had created a soul clone and taken control of Ancestor Han Yi's body. However, Ancestor Han, it was an extraordinary existence at the Downlord realm after all. Even if his soul was dead, his body was still quite formidable. So, it was extremely difficult for Murong Yu to take complete control of it. However, because he was worried about Han Dan, Murong Yu had appeared in Ancestor Han Yi's identity after he took initial control of Ancestor Han Yi's body. Even though it was only for a short period of time, Murong Yu's soul clone was on the verge of being unable to suppress Ancestor Han Yi's body. He'd suffered an extremely huge backlash. If Murong Yu had arrived a little later, then Murong Yu's soul clone would have suffered backlash from Ancestor Han Yi's body, and his soul clone would have been obliterated. At that time, Han Rong and the others would notice that something was off, and they would be exposed. On the other hand, Murong Yu's subsequent plans had come to an end just like that. Time acceleration. Murong Yu, who'd attained the 5th rank of the Heavenly Realm, started to work with the soul clone within Ancestor Han Yi's body to suppress and take complete control of Ancestor Han Yi's body. After time was accelerated, only a day had passed in the outside world, and Murong Yu had finally suppressed the backlash from Ancestor Han Yi's body. This wasn't Murong Yu's objective. His objective was for Murong Yu to take complete control of Ancestor Han Yi's body. He wanted to recover his peak combat strength as soon as possible. Right now, he only had the strength of a peak Dao Lord because he couldn't completely control Ancestor Han Yi's body. During this time, Murong Yu had gone out a few times with Ancestor Han Yi's body. As expected, Han Rong and the other patriarchs didn't dare to disobey. When Ancestor Han Yi gave the order, they released Han Dan. After being released, Han Dan quickly left the Soul Race's territory. According to Murong Yu's understanding, Han Dan hadn't been controlled by the evil power at that time. He must have left in a hurry to go to that mysterious planet. At the same time, because of Ancestor Han Yi's words, the Soul Race took care of Shenzhen, although they didn't provide any substantial resources. Because of the Soul Race's secret care, Shenzhen wasn't a threat recently. In particular, Zhu Xiaoning, a business genius, was like a fish in water. Shenzhen's auction house was opening more and more. Because of the auction house, Shenzhen was raking in money every day. With the support of a large amount of resources, Shenzhen's disciples were flourishing. Their strength had increased greatly. Murong Yu's women and his children weren't a big deal. These people were naturally people that Murong Yu had poured a lot of effort and resources into. Moreover, their aptitudes were top-notch. Therefore, one by one, they broke through quickly. Some people had already reached the true self realm. As for Li Feng, Duan Muqing, Fan Tong, and other Murong Yu's brothers and Shenzhen's disciples, they were the same. Although some people might not be as good as Zhao Jiqing's group of 5 or Murong Xian's group, their progress was extremely fast. A large number of experts quickly surged. Under such a favorable situation, Murong Yu believed that it was only a matter of time before Shenzhen became one of the strongest forces in the universe. This was naturally something that he was happy to see. In the following time, Murong Yu didn't leave the Soul Race's territory. Instead, he continued to refine Patriarch Han Yi's body in the Hichu Luo Shu. Occasionally, he would appear in the Soul Race's territory as himself or Patriarch Han Yi. During this time, Murong Yu would occasionally enter the Soul Race's soul pool to temper his body. At the same time, relying on Patriarch Han Yi and Elder Han Xian soul power, his cultivation realm also improved greatly. If this continued, by the time he completely controlled Patriarch Han Yi's body, he might have reached the true self realm. At the very least, he would reach the peak of the sky realm. And if he reached the true self realm, his combat strength would reach the Tao Lord realm in one fell swoop. Time slowly passed. Nothing happened to Shenzhen, the Soul Race, or the nearby factions. It seemed that everything was moving on the right track. However, what Murong Yu and the vast majority of people didn't know was that a frightening crisis was brewing and was slowly approaching. Chapter 2192. Many experts, including those in the Great Tao realm, would think that the universe they were in was the entire endless chaos. But in reality, this was wrong. A universe was the largest unit of a world. There was no similar existence in the universe. But a universe could not represent the entire endless chaos. The vast chaos was boundless. A universe was just one of the worlds in the endless chaos. For example, the universe that Murong Yu was in was just one of the billions of universes in the endless chaos. Therefore, the endless chaos was formed by countless universes and chaos. In the entire chaos, universes only occupied a very small part, and the most occupied was the uninhabited chaos. The universe that Murong Yu was in was called the Sacred Universe. The cultivators in this universe were mainly immortal cultivators, God cultivators, sage cultivators, and finally walked toward the Great Tao realm. However, other than the Sacred Universe, there were countless other universes. Some universes mainly cultivated magic, and some mainly cultivated martial arts. However, no matter if it was immortal cultivators, martial arts, or magic, although they were different in the early stages, in the end, they all led to the same destination, toward the Great Tao realm. Every universe, galaxy, and star region existed by the same principle. There were universes that multiplied to the extreme, and there were also universes that reached the end of their lifespans. The so-called reincarnation was not only for cultivators. Even universes had birth, old age, illness, and death. Every universe was extremely huge. In every universe, there was a sea of cultivators. These cultivators were all very powerful, and every one of them had great magical powers. Overturning rivers and seas and destroying stars were naturally nothing. Once a universe entered the reincarnation state, it would eventually turn back into endless chaos and merge into the endless chaos again. And after a long time, a new universe would be born. And once a universe was destroyed, the cultivators inside would naturally be annihilated as well. As long as they were still in the universe, they could not escape. And no cultivator was willing to die, who did not want to live as long as chaos. Therefore, there were also wars between universes. Moreover, when it concerned their own life and death, the wars were even more intense and cruel. Near the Sacred Universe was another divine universe, that mainly cultivated the physical body. The reason why it was called Divine Universe, that was because there were no immortals or saints in the Divine Universe. There were only gods and great Tao realm powerhouses. Every one of them was a god. In the Divine Universe, every cultivator cultivated their fleshly body. Therefore, each of their physical bodies had almost reached the level of indestructible golden body. Their strength was extremely terrifying. He was even stronger than some cultivators from the Saint Universe, the martial arts universe, and the magic universe. The God Universe was a powerful universe that had multiplied to the extreme. Their overall strength was far stronger than the sacred universe Murongyu was in. It wasn't just in terms of strength, but in terms of cultivators, it was far superior to the sacred universe. Such a universe was ranked among the top, even among the countless universes in the endless chaos. But now, everyone in the divine universe was in danger. If Murongyu could appear in the divine cosmos, he would see that the divine cosmos was filled with death energy, lifeless. Standing in the middle of this universe, everyone felt extremely oppressed, because this place was like the end of the world. The end of the world? Yes, it was the end of the world, the end of the universe. Decline from the peak of prosperity. The age of the God universe was quite old. At this time, the divine universe had already entered the path of reincarnation. In other words, Shun Cosmos had reached the end of its life. In the beginning, the cultivators of the God universe didn't think much of it. But after many years, the death energy became denser and denser. Even a fool would understand what was going on. However, in the beginning, the cultivators of the God universe only thought that the planet, origin planet, galaxy, or starfield they were on was about to die of old age. Thus, a war broke out. The people of each galaxy and starfield were attacking other galaxies and starfields. However, when they arrived at other galaxies and star regions, they realized that the other star regions were the same. They were all lifeless. In the end, a piece of news spread in the God universe. It wasn't just their galaxies and starfields that were about to die of old age, but the entire God universe. Thus, countless cultivators panicked. The entire universe was about to be destroyed. They would definitely be destroyed along with the universe. Thus, the desire that was suppressed in the bottom of the cultivators' hearts, it completely exploded. Vendetta, killing the innocent, all kinds of things began to happen in every starfield in the God universe. Every one of them was releasing the darkness in their hearts. Every moment, a large number of cultivators would die. In the beginning, the superpowers of the God universe would step in to stop it. However, everything was only effective in the beginning. Later on, even if they stepped in, it would be of no use. In the end, those superpowers closed their doors and didn't continue to stop it. It wasn't that they didn't want to, but that they couldn't stop it. Although there were many disciples in these superpowers, there were even more cultivators in the God universe. How many people could they stop? God universe, divine sect. Divine sect was one of the strongest superpowers in the God universe. It was even much stronger than the soul race in the Saint universe. After all, although the soul race was strong, the Saint universe and the God universe weren't on the same level. Divine sect, main hall. Besides a middle-aged man with a dignified expression and a worried expression who sat upright on the main seat in the hall, the two sides of the hall were filled with grand Tao realm experts. Those who had the right to appear here were the masters of the most powerful superpowers in the God universe. It was these people who controlled the entire God universe. They were, in fact, the true rulers of the God universe. Alliance Master, I suggest that our Divine Universe Alliance immediately dispatch troops to the Saint Universe to seize and occupy the Saint Universe. Otherwise, if this continues, then even if we're able to occupy the Saint Universe in the end, we'll suffer extremely heavy casualties. I'm afraid there won't be many left. A Dowlord at the side of the hall stood up and gazed at the sect master of the divine sect who sat upright on the main seat. The Divine Universe Alliance. It was the alliance of all the superpowers in the God universe. The sect master of the divine sect was the leader of this alliance. The objective of the alliance was to seize the Saint Universe or other universes. Otherwise, once the God Universe was destroyed, they would perish along with it. None of them were willing to die. This was especially true for the Great Tao Realm experts, even though the Saint Universe is the closest to our God Universe. However, the energy of the heaven and earth in the Saint Universe isn't suitable for the cultivators of our God Universe. After all, their energy of the heaven and earth is only suitable for saints. If we go there, our cultivation will yield twice the results for half the effort. For now, it doesn't affect our God Universe at all. But after a long period of time, our God Universe's strength will gradually weaken. At that time, we might be counterattacked by the Saint Universe, or suffer the attacks of other universes. The first Tao Lord hadn't finished speaking when the second Tao Lord had stood up and objected. The Tao Lord who spoke first revealed a displeased expression. The Saint Universe's strength is far inferior to us. It's the easiest universe for our God Universe to take down. If we don't attack the Saint Universe, then should we attack the Magic Universe or the Martial Universe? The Magic Universe's strength is on par with ours, so it's probably extremely difficult to take them down. Especially the Martial Universe. Their overall strength is superior to ours. If we attack them rashly, then it's a problem whether we'll be able to succeed. The Martial Universe cultivates the universe. It's different from the cultivation techniques and combat skills of the Saint Universe and Magic Universe. The Martial Universe cultivates the body as well. So, the energy of the heaven and earth in the Martial Universe is the most suitable for the cultivators of our God Universe. The third Tao Lord stood up and spoke in a low voice. Could it be that we have to attack the Martial Universe? Perhaps we'll suffer a crushing defeat if we do that. A Grand Tao Realm expert objected. After all, the Martial Universe was stronger than them. I suggest that we take down the Saint Universe first. Then, we'll use the Saint Universe as a springboard to attack the Martial Universe. The Martial Universe is our ultimate goal. Take down the Saint Universe first? So what if we take down the Sacred Universe with the least amount of losses? It's utterly impossible for us to improve our strength in the Saint Universe. It's even to the extent that our combat strength will be weakened. If this continues, the gap between us and the Martial Universe will grow larger and larger. Perhaps we'll even be flattened by the Martial Universe in the end. The Grand Tao Realm experts were arguing incessantly in the hall. However, they'd basically been divided into two factions. One was naturally in favor of taking down the Saint Universe first. The other faction suggested taking down the Martial Universe first. Enough. The sect master of the Divine Sect, who is also the alliance master of the Divine Universe Alliance, frowned and shouted. In an instant, the entire hall fell silent, and all of them were looking at their alliance master. The Saint Universe is weak, and we can take it down at any time. However, the energy of the heaven and earth in the Saint Universe really isn't suitable for us. What I mean is that we should attack the Martial Universe first. It'll be great if we can take down the Martial Universe. If we can't, then we'll retreat from the Saint Universe and take it down directly. Alliance Master is wise. Everyone cheered loudly. After all, the sect master's decision was in line with the thoughts of both factions. Moreover, everyone present felt that even if they failed to attack the Martial Universe, they could still easily take down the Saint Universe. It wasn't that they were too strong, but that the Saint Universe was too weak. 100 years. I'll only give you 100 years. After 100 years, we'll attack the Martial Universe. At the same time, I don't want this news to leak out. The sect master glanced at everyone present, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Everyone's heart trembled, and they all agreed. Then they all dispersed. They went back to reorganize their troops and were about to attack the Martial Universe. Meanwhile, in the Saint Universe, Murong Yu and the others hadn't received any news at all. They were still enjoying a peaceful world, but they didn't know that a huge crisis was about to befall them. Chapter 2193. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. Facing the destruction of the divine universe, all the major forces were ready to set off. Therefore, 100 years later, the Divine Universe Alliance's army marched out of the Divine Universe and headed straight for the Martial Universe. A long and tragic war was about to unfold. Who would win and who would lose? Would the Martial Dao Universe, which was originally stronger than the Divine Universe, win and kill all the enemies? Or would the Divine Universe, which was facing destruction and on the verge of desperation, destroy the Martial Dao Universe and become the master of the Martial Dao Universe? Nothing was known for the time being. This war was destined to be long and drawn out. It was impossible to determine the winner in a short time. In that case, would this terrifying war affect other universes? Every cultivator in the Divine Universe was facing the crisis of destruction. Therefore, none of them wanted to die. Therefore, they all erupted with extremely strong battle power. It could be said that they were performing exceptionally. And because this was a battle similar to a sneak attack, therefore, the Martial Dao Universe did not receive any news at all. Therefore, when the war began, dozens of starfields in the Martial Dao Universe had fallen. All the cultivators in these dozens of starfields, regardless of their strength, were killed by the Divine Universe's cultivators. Because the Divine Universe's cultivators knew one thing: if they did not kill the Martial Dao Universe's people, these people would take revenge. In the end, it would be a great danger to the final outcome. Therefore, they had to kill all of them. Moreover, the Divine Universe Alliance was an alliance of the strongest people in the entire Divine Universe. In addition to the sneak attack, the cultivators in the Martial Dao Universe's starfields could not react in time and were unable to resist. This was an incomparably tragic battle. The Divine Universe, which occupied dozens of starfields, finally had a place to stay in the Martial Dao Universe. Therefore, after occupying these starfields, the Divine Universe's cultivators kept coming from the Divine Universe. They were temporarily stationed in these universes. However, there were too many cultivators in the Divine Universe. How could dozens of starfields accommodate them? Therefore, they needed more starfields. They needed the entire Martial Dao Universe. During this process, the Martial Dao Universe already knew about the cruel massacre of the Divine Universe Alliance. This aroused the anger of all the cultivators in the Martial Dao Universe. A few days later, the Martial Alliance was established. The most powerful forces in the entire Martial Dao Universe had formed an alliance. They had sent out troops and were determined to exterminate the villains who had invaded their homeland. As a result, an even more intense battle broke out. Corpses were everywhere. Many planets, origin planets, and even galaxies were destroyed. Countless cultivators fell in the endless starry sky, and their blood flowed like rivers. The blood of the cultivators even formed rivers of blood in the starry sky. While the Divine Universe and the Martial Dao Universe were fighting, the cultivators in the nearby star fields also received the news. Such a big commotion couldn't be hidden from the eyes of others. What? Were there more universes beyond this universe? Moreover, there will be a fierce war between each universe? Murong was shocked when he learned about the matter between the Divine Universe and the Martial Universe. Immediately, a trace of worry rose in his heart. He had a feeling that the sacred universe he was in wasn't very safe either. In the end, they might be affected by the war between the Divine Universe and the Martial Universe. Given the strength of the sacred cosmos, there was no way they could get away with it. It was even very likely that the sacred cosmos would become cannon fodder in the war. Of course, with Murong current strength, it wasn't his turn to worry about the entire sacred cosmos. He was worried about his family and Shenzhen. Once the sacred cosmos was affected, Shenzhen, and the others would also be affected. At that time, it wasn't impossible for them to be ruthlessly destroyed. Patriarchon E, you'll be my spy in the Soul Tribe. Remember, you're not my clone, not Murong, but Patriarchon E. Murong pondered for a moment, and then said in a deep voice to Patriarchon E standing next to him. Patriarchon E nodded and then quickly left. 100 years in the outside world, under the acceleration of the Hichu Luoshu, who knew how many epochs had passed. During this time, Murong Yu had completely merged with Patriarch Han Yi's physical body. Moreover, he had completely obtained Patriarch Han Yi's memories. Now that he was imitating, no one would be able to see through the flaws. If Murong Yu hadn't taken the initiative to reveal Patriarch Han Yi's true identity, the Soul Tribe's patriarchs probably wouldn't have been able to see through it. At the same time, Murong Yu strengthened his soul, cultivation, and physical body again during this time. Although his realm didn't increase by much, his soul and cultivation power had already merged 30,000 vortexes. His lethality had skyrocketed. Originally, Murong Yu's battle strength had only reached the 3rd or 4th level of the initial Dao realm. But now, it had reached the 5th level of the initial Dao realm. It was a full 3 levels higher than his original strength. This was quite terrifying. The 5th level of the Sky realm, the 5th level of the initial Dao realm. It was definitely unprecedented and would never be replicated in the future. Of course, Murong Yu wasn't satisfied with this achievement. His biggest goal was to be able to merge his soul and power vortexes to 100,000, 100,000, or even 1,000,000. If he merged 1,000,000 vortexes, then wouldn't Murong Yu's combat strength exceed his original strength by 4 realms? Or even 5 realms? If Murong Yu was able to attain the Dao Lord realm while still at the Sky realm, then it would be even more heaven-defying. However, Murong Yu didn't suffer no losses from the increase in his combat strength. The soul energy that Hun, Xian, and Han he had left within him had been completely exhausted. That couldn't be helped. Merging vortexes was an extremely dangerous and exhausting project. Every single success was built on the foundation of countless failures. Regardless of whether it succeeded or failed, it would consume an enormous amount of energy. However, Murong Yu didn't feel pain by it at all. That energy had to be consumed in the first place. Even though it had been consumed, hadn't it improved his combat strength? The Hun clan's hall. Hun, Yi, and a few dozen others had appeared here. All of them had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. All of them were Dao Lords. In the Hun clan, only existences at the Dao Lord realm had the qualifications to become ancestors. Moreover, Murong Yu was aware that this wasn't the Hun clan's entire strength. Some of the ancestors of the Hun clan were extremely far away, and they weren't able to return in time. I believe all of you understand the principle of being intimately interdependent. Presently, the martial Dao universe and divine universe are in war. Regardless of who wins or loses, it's very likely to affect our saint universe. What do all of you think? An ancestor called Hun Han glanced at everyone present here before he spoke in a low voice. Hun Han was one of the strongest ancestors of the Hun clan. His status in the Hun clan was on par with Han Yi. Regardless of whether it's the martial Dao universe or divine universe that has won. However, they're absolutely unable to annihilate all the cultivators of their opposing universes. Moreover, even if it's a universe that has suffered a crushing defeat, it's still not an existence that our saint universe can go against. The cultivators of those universes that have lost will naturally be driven out of the martial Dao universe. So where will they go? They'll definitely come to our saint universe. After all, we're the weakest universe in the vicinity. They will take over our universe, then kill us all and take over our sacred universe. Or they'll be exterminated by the winning side. At the same time, they'll also destroy our saint universe. Therefore, I think that, although there's no movement yet, we have to establish a saint universe alliance and deploy a massive army at the edge of the universe to prevent any trouble before it's too late. The one who spoke was Ancestor Hun Yi, who was also Murong Yu's second clone. Actually, this was Murong Yu's idea. Murong Yu's words didn't carry much weight, and Glory Sect couldn't be brought to the table for the time being. Therefore, he needed to borrow the identity of Ancestor Hun Yi and use the Hun clan to resist the martial Dao universe or divine universe. As his strength increased, his ability to deduce heaven's secrets became even stronger. Although there was no clear heaven's secrets, Murongyu already had a premonition that the Saint Universe would eventually be involved in the war between the Divine Universe and the Martial Tao Universe. Therefore, he had this plan. Moreover, didn't the chaotic race have two slave races? Besides the Hun clan, there was also the Great Void race. However, Murongyu didn't know anything about the current situation of the Great Void race from Hanyu's memories. It was as if the Great Void race had completely disappeared or didn't exist at all. Murongyu also needed to use this alliance as an opportunity to lure the Great Void race out. At that time, he could determine whether the Great Void race was still loyal to the chaotic race or had already betrayed the Hun clan like the Hun clan. I think we should consider Han Yi's suggestion carefully. We should unite the strongest forces of the Saint Universe and form the Saint Universe Alliance. After all, once the Martial Tao Universe or the Divine Universe attacks our Saint Universe, the Hun clan won't be able to escape. As soon as Ancestor Han Yi finished speaking, another ancestor chimed in to express his agreement with Murongyu's idea. In the hall, some ancestors nodded. Obviously, they also agreed with Murongyu's idea. However, there were some who chose to remain silent, and their expressions were uncertain. No one knew what they were thinking. After a long time, Ancestor Hun Han asked in a deep voice, "What does everyone think? Let's form the alliance. However, the leader must be the Hun clan. Also, we need the Grand Elder to come back and preside over the situation." A Hun clan ancestor who had been silent seemed to have made up his mind and said in a deep voice, "What time is it now? You still care about the name? Reaping benefits for yourself?" Murongyu couldn't help but feel angry. Therefore, Ancestor Han also glanced at the ancestor who had spoken with displeasure. However, apart from Murongyu, everyone present was an ancestor of the Hun clan. Therefore, they all nodded in agreement. Only Murongyu felt depressed. Chapter 2194. In the end, it was the Soul Race who came out to deal with the Sacred Universe Alliance. Murongyu left the Soul Race after the meeting and returned to Shenzhen. The Soul Race had his clone, Old Ancestor Hun. This was Murongyu's most powerful informant, and even influenced the Soul Race to a certain extent. If the Sacred Universe Alliance could succeed, it was not impossible for Old Ancestor Hun to become a deputy alliance leader. And Old Ancestor Hun was equivalent to Murongyu. Therefore, Murongyu's main body did not worry about this at all. The reason why he returned to Shenzhen was because some strange things had happened in Shenzhen recently. Shenzhen was getting stronger and stronger, and relying on the increasingly powerful Shenzhen and the Soul Race's secret care. The business genius Zhu Xiaoning not only opened the Shenzhen auction house in Shenzhen's territory, but also in other territories. For example, within the Mysterious Sky Palace's territory. Among the billions of star fields of the Mysterious Sky Palace, every star field had a Shenzhen auction house. And these auction houses provided a terrifying amount of resources for Shenzhen. This was because Murongyu was also a deputy palace master of the Mysterious Sky Palace, even though he did not specifically take care of the Shenzhen auction house. But relying on the advantages of the Shenzhen auction house, the Shenzhen auction house was still doing well in the Mysterious Sky Palace's territory. However, it was not doing well in another power. The 100 Battles sect was a power even stronger than the Mysterious Sky Palace. It was not near Shenzhen, but was separated from Shenzhen by a power, the 1,000 sects. The current Shenzhen was a star field ruled by the High Mountain sect, Mastery Temple, and the other 5 powers. Therefore, Shenzhen's territory had reached 1 billion star fields, which was much larger than the 100 million star fields of the Mysterious Sky Palace. And in the vicinity of Shenzhen, other than the Mysterious Sky Palace, there were the 1,000 sects and a few other sections. These powers were about the same as the Mysterious Sky Palace, and some were even stronger than the Mysterious Sky Palace. However, within the territory, they were far inferior to Shenzhen. After Zhu Xiaoning opened Glory Sect's auction house all over Glory Sect and Tianji Palace, she set her sights on 100 Battles sect. The reason why they targeted the 100 Battles sect was because the territory of the 100 Battles sect was even larger than the Glory Sect in the billions. With so many star fields with the resources with them was also extremely terrifying. If the Glory Sect auction house could take root in the 100 Battles sect, then the benefits it would bring would be far greater than the few forces near Glory Sect. With the price, the Sky Palace of the Thousand Sects, and other battles with lightning speed. Cheap, beautiful, and rich treasures. This was a treasure that the Shenzhen auction house relied on to be fast and exaggerated. Therefore, in a short 10 years, the Shenzhen auction house was doing well in the 100 Battles sect. In fact, it showed signs of expanding. However, a few days ago, the 100 Battles sect Shenzhen auction house was destroyed overnight. Not only were all the treasures inside stolen, but the treasures that the customers had left for the auction were all stolen. Even the staff of the Shenzhen auction house were not spared. They were all killed, and no one was able to escape. After learning of this, Morongyu hurriedly rushed back from the soul race. The impact of this matter was too great. Not to mention that the loss of the treasures caused Shenzhen to suffer heavy losses. The losses would eventually be recovered. However, the staff of the Shenzhen auction house were all Shenzhen's disciples. They were all killed, and this made Morongyu feel unusually angry. Shenzhen, Holy Sanctum. Holy Master, I think this matter must have been done by the 100 Battles sect. Only they have the ability to destroy our auction house of over 10,000 in one night. Zhu Xiaoning gloomily looked at Morongyu, who was sitting on the main seat. Her voice was filled with terrifying killing intent. Morongyu nodded. He also had this suspicion. Otherwise, who would dare to destroy Shenzhen auction house? The reason why the 100 Battles sect wanted to destroy Shenzhen auction house was probably because the Shenzhen auction house had already affected their interests. One must know that there was only one auction house in the 100 Battles sect's territory, the 100 Battles auction house. In other words, the 100 Battles sect controlled the only auction house. One could imagine how terrifying the 100 Battles sect's profits were. The Shenzhen auction house had opened over 10,000 rooms in such a short time. If they were given more time, how could the 100 Battles auction house survive? The reason why they stole all the treasures of the Shenzhen auction house and killed all the staff of the Shenzhen auction house was because of this. This was a show of force. This was to intimidate Morongyu. This was because the 100 Battles sect was even stronger than the occult Mystery Palace. This organization had multiple Tao Lords within it. It was because of these experts that they were so vicious and merciless, not giving Shenzhen any face at all. The 100 Battles sect has gone too far. Holy Master, I think we should kill our way over. They were all suppressed. They actually destroyed our Shenzhen auction house and killed our disciples. How audacious! Zhang Ao said with a murderous look. Duan Muqing glared fiercely at Zhang Ao. That's the 100 Battles sect, and it isn't a small power. Even though our Shenzhen auction house has developed well, have you entered the Grand Tao realm? Has anyone entered the Grand Tao realm? Zhang Ao was instantly discouraged, even though Shenzhen auction house had never lacked geniuses. But the time they had was still too short. Even though their strengths had improved extremely swiftly, they were still far inferior to the 100 Battles sect. All of this required the accumulation of time. However, with the strength Morongyu possessed now, he only had to give the word to eliminate the 100 Battles sect from the hallowed universe. After all, so long as Ancestor Han gave the word, then any Tao Lord from the Hun clan would be able to slap the experts of the 100 Battles sect to death. However, Morongyu wasn't willing to rely on the strength of the Hun clan. After all, it wasn't his own strength. Of course, Morongyu could still borrow those 60 slaves of the Grand Tao realm. After all, it was Morongyu who had painstakingly obtained it. They were a part of his strength as well. The matter doesn't seem to be so simple. Let's head to the 100 Battles sect and see what's going on. Morongyu was filled with displeasure as well. He immediately led some Tao Lord realm slaves and core members of Shenzhen auction house, and then he flashed towards the 100 Battles sect with a murderous look on his face. After a period of time, they'd already arrived at the 100 Battles sect's location. 100 Battles star? Ha ha ha. I didn't know that Sect Master Shenzhen had arrived, so I didn't welcome you. Forgive me, forgive me. Murong Yu's group had just arrived not too far away from the Hundred Battles sect. Roaring laughter resounded from the direction of the Hundred Battles sect. At the same time, a figure flashed out from the front of the Hundred Battles sect and moved to greet Murong Yu's group. It was a middle-aged man who was only at the 5th level of the heavenly realm. Even though he was roaring with laughter, his eyes revealed ridicule. The Hundred Battles sect is simply going too far. Zhang Ao was the first to become furious. They hadn't kept a low profile all along the way. With the Hundred Battles sect's intelligence network, they must have known long ago that they were coming. However, the Hundred Battles sect sent out a little cultivator of the same realm as Murong Yu to greet them. This was definitely a humiliation to Shenzhen. A humiliation to Murong Yu. This was too much. Duan Muqing and the others were instantly enraged. Even though it was Murong Yu, the anger in his heart was still slowly surging. Although the Hundred Battles sect was stronger than Shenzhen, in terms of true strength, they might not be stronger than Shenzhen. The Hundred Battles sect humiliated Shenzhen like this. It was obvious that they didn't take Shenzhen seriously at all. However, what was the Hundred Battles sect planning? Murong Yu didn't know yet, so he motioned for Zhang Ao and the others to calm down. Meanwhile, he looked at the disciple of the Hundred Battles sect and said indifferently, "I need to see your sect master." The middle-aged man smiled faintly and said, "I'm really sorry. Recently, our sect master has been in seclusion. Vice sect masters, elders, and the others are not idle either. Therefore, I can only come to greet you. If you really want to see our sect master, you can stay in the Hundred Battles Mountain for the time being. After our sect master comes out of seclusion, he will summon you. However, I can't guarantee when the sect master will come out of seclusion." Summon. Zhang Ao and the others almost couldn't help but want to kill this Hundred Battles sect disciple with a punch. Summon? Did he think he was the master? How dare he summon Murong Yu? Moreover, how could there be such a coincidence? Murong Yu just happened to be in seclusion when he came over. The other vice sect masters and elders also weren't idle. Sacred Lord, this is clearly a humiliation from the Hundred Battles sect to us. In my opinion, we should just fight our way up. I want to see how powerful the Hundred Battles sect is. Zhang Ao looked at Murong Yu with anger in his heart. Fight our way up? This time, Murong Yu had brought many Dao slaves with him. It was no problem to deal with the Hundred Battles sect. Not only did the Hundred Battles sect destroy the Shenzhen auction house, kill Shenzhen's disciples, but they also humiliated Shenzhen. They really deserved to die. Even if they fought their way up, no one would say anything. Such people should be beaten up and taught a good lesson. Otherwise, they will never know that not everyone is someone they can offend. If they dare to touch our Shenzhen, we will make them pay back 1,000,000,000 times over. Duan Muqing also said with a murderous aura. It seemed that what they said made sense. A cold, killing intent flashed through Murong Yu's eyes, and then a smile appeared on his face. Take him down. Swish. As soon as Murong Yu said that, Zhang Ao couldn't help but attack. He stretched out his hand and slapped the complacent middle-aged man into the depths of the ground. Then, Zhang Ao stomped on the middle-aged man's head. Bastard, I've been annoyed with you for a long time. Do you feel good now? As he spoke, Zhang Ao pulled the middle-aged man out of the ground. Then, he started to beat the middle-aged man up with a series of crackling sounds. The middle-aged man's tears flowed down instantly. Everything happened too quickly. He didn't even have time to react, okay? Chapter 2195. However, even so, the Hundred Battles sect disciple was still extremely arrogant. You dare to attack me? You're dead. The Hundred Battles sect disciple roared crazily with a murderous look on his face. Clang, clang, clang. At the same time, the disciples near the Hundred Battles sect also saw this scene. Immediately, they unsheathed their swords and rushed over with murderous intent. Without saying anything, they directly launched a crazy attack on Murong Yu and the others. This quality, Murong Yu and the others were speechless. Wasn't the Hundred Battles sect too arrogant? They actually attacked directly? Moreover, by the looks of it, they had no intention of showing mercy at all. Each of them mustered up their strength and wanted to kill Murong Yu and the others. Holy Lord, how should we deal with these bastards? Should we kill them all? Zhang Ao grabbed the middle-aged man's neck and lifted him like a chicken while asking Murong Yu. Murderous intent. We're guests after all. It's not good to kill their people in front of their house. But these guys dared to attack us. If we don't teach them a lesson, they'll really think that we, Shenzhen, are easy to bully. Just beat them to the ground. Be careful, don't kill them. Just make sure they can't get out of bed for a few years. Boom! As soon as Murong Yu finished speaking, Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others attacked. These people were all Shenzhen's elites and were all very powerful. The 100 Battles sect disciples were all cultivators in the celestial realm and true self realm. They were no match for Zhang Ao and the others. Therefore, almost in a flash, these people were all blasted to the ground by Zhang Ao and the others. Although Zhang Ao and the others did not kill them. However, it still caused them to suffer heavy injuries. They would not be able to recover without a few years or even decades of effort. However, this was in front of the 100 Battles sect's mountain gate after all. Some of them were 100 Battles sect disciples. Zhang Ao and the others had just slapped these people to the ground when more 100 Battles sect disciples rushed over while yelling. Zhang Ao and the others didn't say anything and directly went forward. After a round of violent beatings, these people followed in the footsteps of the people before them and were all beaten to the ground. However, more and more 100 Battles sect disciples rushed over. Moreover, his realm was getting higher and higher. Even selfless realm-level existences had already appeared. Although Zhang Ao and the rest's strength was not bad, the time they cultivated was too short and had not reached selfless realm yet. Besides Murong Yu and his slaves of the Grandao realm, no one else had attained the Grandao realm. However, even so, Zhang Ao and the others were not afraid and directly pounced forward. So what if the other party was a selfless realm expert? He still dared to fight. However, he was quickly defeated. After all, not everyone was like Murong Yu, who had the frightening strength to kill enemies above his level. However, Murong Yu and the others were there. Although Zhang Ao and the others were defeated and injured, their injuries were not serious, and there was no threat to their lives. These were Shenzhen's elite, core disciples. How could Murong Yu let their lives be threatened? You're Shenzhen's holy lord. Murong Yu? Deva Realm, 5th tier cultivator? I think it's just SOSO. A selfless realm-level cultivator from 100 Battles sect walked over, looking at Murong Yu with a disdainful look. Shenzhen's disciples are also a bunch of trash. I really don't understand. How did High Mountain and Great Success Temple's trash get defeated by you guys? All a bunch of trash. This selfless realm cultivator from 100 Battles sect still mocked Murong Yu. Damn it. Zhang Ao flew into a rage, virtually unable to resist rushing out and wildly slapping that person's mouth. It was just a pity that there was a huge gap in strength. Although Zhang Ao was furious, his rationality was still there, did not make a move. It was just that he had a belly full of anger in his heart, but had nowhere to vent. Zhang Ao and the others were enraged. However, Murong Yu and his Great Virtue Realm slaves were the only ones who remained calm. Those Great Dao Realm slaves were Dao Lord Realm super experts after all. How could they be angered by these people's words? Moreover, the other party wasn't scolding them. They weren't Shenzhen's disciples at all. As for Murong Yu, to be able to lead Shenzhen from a mortal world step by step until now, he had his magnanimity. Although these people were mocking and insulting Shenzhen. But in Murong Yu's ears, it was like a dog barking. If a dog barked at you, you couldn't learn from a dog and bark at it, right? How embarrassing would that be? However, Murong Yu couldn't let the other party continue to insult him so wantonly. This person had such guts. It must have been instructed by the higher-ups of 100 Battles sect. Since 100 Battles sect was bent on making things difficult for Shenzhen, then Murong Yu naturally didn't need to be courteous with them. Hence, Murong Yu pointed at the 100 Battles sect's selfless realm cultivator and pressed over. Ha ha! Seeing Murong you make a move, the 100 Battles sect disciples all laughed out loud. Each and every one of their faces revealed mocking expressions, especially that selfless realm cultivator. His face was even filled with disdain. They all did not think that Murong Yu, this Deva realm level 5 cultivator, could cause any harm to that selfless realm cultivator of 100 Battles sect. He actually dared to make a move. He was absolutely looking for humiliation. It was just that their laughter came out. Murong Yu's finger was already pressing down in the void. At this moment, that selfless realm cultivator of 100 Battles sect, including the other cultivators of 100 Battles sect, all felt an incomparably terrifying pressure descend from the sky. Thud! 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 The disciples of the 100 Battles sect all knelt down at the same time. It was not that they expressed submission or knelt down willingly, but that terrifying power made them unable to resist at all and could only kneel down. Otherwise, they would be suppressed by that terrifying pressure until their bodies directly exploded and they died. Seeing the situation, Zhang Ao and the rest turned pale with fright as they looked at these 100 Battles sect disciples. What's wrong with you guys? Our Shenzhen is just an unrated faction. You guys actually kneeled down to welcome us. We're really flattered. Zhang Ao said in an enigmatic tone. The disciples of the 100 Battles sect all had ashen faces, and their bodies were constantly trembling. It was very clear that they were struggling. Except, no matter how they struggled, they were unable to break free. After all, Murong Yu's current true combat strength had long reached initial Dao Realm Level 5 already. How could this group of rookies from 100 Battles sect break free? This time, they could not take them down a notch. Instead, it became kneeling to welcome Murong Yu and the rest. 100 Battles sect's wishful thinking was completely ruined, and Murong Yu and the rest did not leave or enter 100 Battles sect. They stood where they were and accepted the kneeling of the 100 Battles sect disciples. He knew that the higher-ups of 100 Battles sect, especially the sect leader of 100 Battles sect, would not be able to sit still very soon. Sure enough, after a while, a hearty laugh came from the depths of 100 Battles sect. Honored guests have come from afar. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. Friends of Shenzhen, please forgive me. Before the voice fell, a figure had already appeared in front of Murong Yu and the rest. And before this person could stand firm, Murong Yu already felt an undercurrent surging towards him directly. The person who came was an initial Dao Realm Level 9 powerhouse. In 100 Battles sect, this strength was at the level of an elder. After he came over, Murong Yu saw a flash of anger in his eyes, but it was quickly covered up. However, the surging undercurrent made Murong Yu feel his surging killing intent. Kill Murong Yu? He definitely had this idea. However, when the undercurrent surged towards Murong Yu, the aura of the person who came also rushed towards the 100 Battles sect disciples kneeling on the ground. He wanted to rescue these people from Murong Yu's suppression. Oof. A Dao Lord realm slave who had been standing behind Murong Yu, without saying a word, took a step forward and stood behind Murong Yu. At the same time, an obscure but incomparably powerful aura swarmed out from his body. The other party's strength was at initial Dao Realm Level 9, which far surpassed Murong Yu's. It should be their turn to make a move. However, he did it in a more subtle way. Puff! After a muffled sound, the undercurrent of 100 Battles sect's initial Dao powerhouse was directly annihilated. On the other hand, the aura of Murong Yu's Dao Lord Realm powerhouse counterattacked. Puff! The initial Dao powerhouse of 100 Battles sect turned pale and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Dao Lord Realm! The person exclaimed in his heart, and a trace of shock flashed through his eyes. Fortunately, Shenzhen's Dao Lord Realm powerhouse didn't kill him and quickly retreated after the successful attack. Otherwise, this initial Dao powerhouse of 100 Battles sect would have been blasted into a pile of mud. Seeing the person vomit blood, Zhang Ao turned pale with fright again. Senior, what's wrong? Could it be that you haven't recovered from your illness? Even a senior like you came out to welcome our Shenzhen. We're really flattered and uneasy. Puffed. Duan Muqing and the others couldn't help but spit out blood. Zhang Ao's words were full of mockery. Not only did he curse the initial Dao powerhouse who vomited blood for being sick for a long time, but he also secretly mocked the 100 Battles sect for having no one. It was killing two birds with one stone. And the initial Dao powerhouse of 100 Battles sect wasn't stupid. How could he not understand Zhang Ao's mockery? However, their 100 Battles sect was the one who showed off their power to Shenzhen first. Now, they were the ones who were defeated. This made him feel like he punched the air, and his heart was abnormally uncomfortable. Haha, I made a fool of myself. Friends of Shenzhen, since you're here, why don't you come to the 100 Battles sect first? After all, he was an old fox-level existence. The initial Dao powerhouse of 100 Battles sect just laughed and dissolved the awkwardness, inviting Murong Yu and the others to walk over. That's more like it. Zhang Ao sneered and immediately looked at Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded his head and took the first step forward. As for Zhang Ao and the others, they followed Murong Yu into the 100 Battles sect. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. Even though he was alone in the 100 Battles sect, Murong Yu wasn't afraid at all. Chapter 2196. Not long after entering the 100 Battles sect's mountain gate, a huge square appeared in the sight of Murong Yu and the rest. Whoosh! The gazes of Murong Yu and the others were immediately drawn over. They were not attracted by the square's size. Although the square was huge, it was about the same size as Shenzhen Square. What attracted their attention were the tens of thousands of heads that were still dripping with blood and hung on the flagpoles in the square. Yes, there were tens of thousands of heads that were still dripping with blood. At first glance, these heads were not sealed or placed with any restrictions. Looking at the fresh blood, they seemed to have been killed not long ago. Murong Yu even saw a disciple of the 100 Battles sect jumping down from a flagpole. Previously, he'd been hanging heads. Haha, Shenzhen's friends are here. I'm the 100 Battles sect's vice sect leader, Bai Hong. When Murong Yu and the rest's attention was attracted to those heads, a middle-aged man greeted them with a big smile. So it's vice sect leader Bai Hong. Looking at Bai Hong, who was already in front of him, Murong Yu cupped his fist slightly. However, his face was still somewhat cold. First, they wanted to show them their power, and now they wanted to show them those bloody heads. What was the 100 Battles sect doing? Intimidating them? Bai Hong laughed and waved his hand, and the initial Dao realm powerhouse who brought Murong Yu in retreated. Holy Lord Murong, please forgive us. You came to the 100 Battles sect because of the returning sect auction house, right? When we found out about this, we were also very angry. Therefore, our 100 Battles sect immediately mobilized all of our intelligence network to investigate these bandits. After that, our vice sect leaders and elders all moved out and quickly killed all the bandits. This is our 100 Battles sect's gift to Shenzhen. Bai Hong explained with a smile. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. This greeting gift was truly unique. Moreover, according to the information, Murong Yu was 90% sure that the one who destroyed the Shenzhen auction house was the 100 Battles sect. Now, the 100 Battles sect had put on such a show and beheaded some people. Furthermore, were those people really bandits? Or did the 100 Battles sect just casually find some scapegoats and kill them to trick Murong Yu? Whether they were bandits or ordinary cultivators, the 100 Battles sect's move had left Murong Yu with no way out. Since the other party had said so, without any real evidence, what could Murong Yu do to the 100 Battles sect? He couldn't just directly question the 100 Battles sect, could he? That was really not giving the 100 Battles sect any face. Wasn't the reason why the 100 Battles sect did this to shut Murong Yu's mouth first? If Murong Yu still didn't give up, then a war would definitely break out between the two forces. Although Murong Yu was confident that he could destroy the 100 Battles sect, now that he was facing a crisis in the universe, he only wanted to quietly develop Shenzhen and didn't want a war. How despicable! Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others' eyes flashed with anger, cursing in their hearts. These people from 100 Battles sect knew their purpose here, but they had already made all the preparations. Before they could speak, their mouths were blocked. Ah, I see. Then I really have to thank the 100 Battles sect for everything you've done for Shenzhen. Thank you for your hard work, Murongyu said with a laugh. When he said the words, thank you, and thank you for your hard work, his tone was very heavy. It's my duty, it's my duty. Bai Hong laughed. Did he mean to destroy the Shenzhen auction house or to destroy those bandits for Shenzhen? While they were talking, they had already entered the reception hall of the 100 Battles sect. Under Bai Hong's signal, Murongyu and the others didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. Although we killed those bandits this time, unfortunately, the treasures they plundered from the Shenzhen auction house can't be recovered. I'm really sorry for making Shenzhen suffer such a big loss. Murongyu felt a chill in his heart. Then he sneered again and again. Even if the Shenzhen auction house was really destroyed by the bandits, the 100 Battles sect also killed those bandits, but the treasures plundered by the bandits probably also went into the pockets of the 100 Battles sect, right? It's just a small matter. Our Shenzhen is a big family in business. That little loss is nothing in our eyes. Murongyu waved his hand, looking like he didn't care. But in fact, did Murongyu really not care? That was impossible. No one could snatch his things and get away with it. He was already calculating in his heart how to get back those losses from the 100 Battles sect 10,000 times, 100 million times. Bai Hong's eyes flashed with a bright light, and he laughed loudly. In that case, then presumably Shenzhen doesn't care about our 100 Battles sect's compensation, right? Originally, we wanted to give Shenzhen some compensation because of this matter, but it seems that Holy Lord Murong doesn't care about our things. This cunning bastard, Murongyu cursed in his heart. Meanwhile, Zhang Ao and the others were cursing Bai Hong in their hearts. If it weren't for the fact that their strength was not as strong as the other party, Zhang Ao and the others would definitely dare to beat Bai Hong up. They weren't familiar with each other, and they seemed to be enemies. After the two sides chatted for a while, Murongyu was about to leave. There was no other way. This matter could only end like this. The 100 Battles sect had already set up a battle array, and Murongyu couldn't do anything to them. Rather than wasting time here, it was better to go back first. Bang! Just as Murongyu was about to leave, the main hall's door was slammed open. Then, a 100 Battles sect disciple hurriedly rushed in. He was in a sorry state. Bai Hong's face suddenly darkened. He looked at the 100 Battles sect disciple who rushed in and was about to question him. However, the person who came spoke first. Deputy sect leader, it's not good. The other deputy sect leaders and some elders are trapped in the Shattered Stars Gorge. What? The person who was about to question, Bai Hong instantly exclaimed. One could imagine how shocking the news brought by the 100 Battles sect disciple was. Holy Lord Murong, I'm really sorry. Something has happened to our 100 Battles sect, and I have to go take care of it. You can stay in the 100 Battles sect for the time being. Go make arrangements for Holy Lord Murong and the others. They are our 100 Battles sect's distinguished guests, so don't neglect them. Before he finished speaking, Bai Hong had already taken a step out. As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Hong's figure had already disappeared from the main hall. Everyone, please follow me. The 100 Battles sect disciple glanced at Murongyu and the others indifferently, then turned to leave. The 100 Battles sect is really snobbish. Even an ordinary disciple looks down on us. Zhang Ao was angry and sneered. Hearing this, the 100 Battles sect disciple suddenly stopped in his tracks, then turned to look at Murongyu and the others. However, after he turned around, his eyes flashed with a dazed look. What kind of place is the Shattered Stars Gorge? Why are the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect leader and elders trapped there? Murongyu's charming voice sounded in the 100 Battles sect disciples' ears. The Shattered Stars Gorge is a dangerous place on our 100 Battles planet. You can't fly there, and it's a huge and extremely long gorge. It's extremely dangerous, but there are abundant resources there, so there are still people from our 100 Battles sect who enter Shattered Stars Gorge to take risks. The Hundred Battles sect disciple spoke about everything about Shattered Stars Gorge. During this entire process, Murong Yu had even directly read his memories and obtained even more detailed information. Just as the Hundred Battles sect disciple had said, Shattered Stars Gorge was an extremely dangerous place. However, there were precious minerals produced inside. These minerals could be used to forge Dao artifacts. Under the refinement of some equipment refinement grandmasters, it was even possible to refine Dao artifacts at the Dao Lord or Dao Lord level. That was extremely terrifying. After all, a mere Dao artifact had caused over 100 Dao Lord realm experts from the Heavenly Mystery Palace to fight each other, and practically all of them had perished in the end because of that Dao artifact. This obviously showed how rare and precious Dao artifacts were. If the minerals within Shattered Stars Gorge could be used to forge Dao artifacts, then would the Hundred Battles sect have to worry about not being strong enough? However, it seemed like the Hundred Battles sect only found out recently that Shattered Stars Gorge possessed minerals that could be used to forge Dao artifacts. Moreover, the Hundred Battles sect still hadn't forged Dao artifacts. Of course, perhaps it was because the status of this disciple from the Hundred Battles sect that Murong Yu read his memories was too low, so he didn't know much. Or perhaps the Hundred Battles sect had already forged numerous Dao artifacts. It's truly a waste if I don't go take a look at such a good place. Murong Yu pondered in his heart, and he'd already decided to go take a look. However, even those vice sect masters and elders of the Hundred Battles sect were trapped within Shattered Stars Gorge. After all, those vice sect masters and elders were Dao Lords. Zhang Ao and the others were shocked as well, and all of them looked at Murong Yu. I'll let you go back first. I'll go take a look at Shattered Stars Gorge. Murong Yu spoke something that caused Zhang Ao and the others to feel slightly disappointed. However, Zhang Ao and the others knew their limits. Shattered Stars Gorge wasn't a place that people at their level could go to. Even if they went, they would only be a burden to Murong Yu. Slap! Murong Yu snapped his fingers, and the Hundred Battles sect disciples' eyes regained clarity. Then, he turned around and walked straight out of the hall. This was because his previous memories had been erased by Murong Yu. Therefore, he had no idea that Murong Yu knew everything about Shattered Stars Gorge. Murong Yu refused to stay in the Hundred Battles sect and left with Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others. Because he already knew the exact location of Shattered Stars Gorge, he didn't need to follow Bai Hong. In the end, Zhang Ao and the others returned. With some Dao Lord experts protecting them, Murong Yu wasn't worried about their safety. As for Murong Yu, he left behind 3 Dao Lord realm slaves. With 3 powerful great Dao realm experts around, it would be much more convenient for Murong Yu to do anything. With 3 Dao Lord realm experts, Murong Yu's group of 4 directly flew towards Shattered Stars Gorge at full speed. Chapter 2197. The Hundred Battles primordial planet was an extremely large primordial planet. Apart from the Hundred Battles sect, there were also a large number of cultivators from other sections. The Shattered Star Gorge had existed on the Hundred Battles primordial planet since ancient times. It was an extremely terrifying place. To the cultivators of the Hundred Battles primordial planet, it was undoubtedly a place of death. Therefore, no one usually stepped into the Shattered Star Gorge. However, after the Hundred Battles sect discovered precious minerals in the Shattered Star Gorge, the Shattered Star Gorge was claimed by the Hundred Battles sect. In fact, even if the Hundred Battles sect did not claim the land, no one would enter this place. Swoosh! Murong Yu landed directly on the outskirts of the Shattered Star Gorge. It was not that he wanted to walk. Instead, there was an inexplicable force here that suppressed this world. Murong Yu naturally lost his ability to fly. However, this place only prohibited flying. There were no restrictions in other aspects. A few Dao Lord Realm slaves were in the Hichu Luoshu and did not come out. However, once Murong Yu was in danger, they could rush out immediately. Waves of incomparably powerful auras constantly seeped in from the front. Murong-yu knew that these people were all experts of the Hundred Battles sect. Some of their auras had even reached the Great Tao realm. Although he was not afraid of these people, but if he encountered them, it would still be troublesome. Therefore, with a flash, Murong-yu's figure disappeared on the spot. Invisibility. After confirming the memories he had read, Murong-yu began to walk towards the shattered star gorge. Although flying was restricted, Murong-yu's walking speed was not slow. It was no problem for him to cross billions of miles with a single step. Moreover, although there were Great Tao realm experts' divine senses here. However, Murong-yu's combat strength had already reached the initial Tao realm. In addition to his heaven-defying invisibility ability, the Great Tao realm experts of the Hundred Battles sect did not notice anything at all. Soon, a long and narrow canyon appeared in Murong-yu's line of sight. The canyon was not big, about 1 billion miles wide. It was very long, and Murong-yu could not see the end of it at a glance. There were a few powerful auras hidden in front of the canyon. These were the experts of the Hundred Battles sect who were guarding this place. Murong-yu concealed himself and appeared at the entrance of the canyon. He looked at the smooth and bare canyon with a strange expression. The two sides of the canyon and the ground were flat and smooth, as if they had been carefully polished. Apart from that, there wasn't even a single plant inside. But what made Murong-yu feel strange was that he did not feel any danger from his canyon at all. There was no illusory array or anything like that. What he saw was real. Since there weren't any plants inside, what other traps could there be? Or a ferocious beast with terrifying strength? The cultivator from the Hundred Battles sect that Murong-yu read had never been here. Therefore, he only knew that the Shattered Stars Gorge was very dangerous. However, he didn't know exactly how dangerous it was. No one came in or out. Murong-yu stood at the entrance of the Shattered Star Gorge and waited for a long time, but he did not see anyone from the Hundred Battles sect come in or out. This destroyed his idea of trying to determine the source of the crisis from these people. Should I go in and check it out? The people from the Hundred Battles sect must be in the depths of the Shattered Stars Gorge. Murong-yu thought in his heart, but he had already stepped out and entered the Shattered Stars Gorge. He had already taken out the Hichu, Luo-shu, and turned it into a set of clothes on his body. As for the other treasures, he didn't take them out, because the experts of the Hundred Battles sect were watching outside the Shattered Stars Gorge, and those treasures couldn't be hidden. Once they were taken out, they would be discovered. That wouldn't be good. Raising his strength to the limit, Murong-yu carefully and slowly entered the Shattered Stars Gorge. After walking for a long time, Murong-yu still didn't encounter any danger, nor did he meet anyone from the Hundred Battles sect. However, he found that there were cave-like things in the smooth, Shattered Stars Gorge. Some of the caves were relatively shallow and couldn't even accommodate a person. But some of the caves were so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Boom! Murong-yu gathered all his strength and stomped on the ground beneath his feet. After a muffled sound, the ground began to tremble. But the ground under Murong-yu's feet didn't shatter. On the contrary, Murong-yu's big foot was in pain from the shock. What a hard stone! Why are the people of the Hundred Battles sect mining here? Murong-yu was a little surprised. He could use the strength of the 5th level of the initial Tao realm to stomp down. But there wasn't even a footprint on the ground under his feet. Whoosh! While Murong-yu was still in shock, a black silhouette shot over from the front. Startled, Murong-yu raised his head and looked over, only to see a panic-stricken ferocious beast pouncing over at lightning speed. At the same time, an extremely strong and dangerous aura instantly shrouded Murong-yu's heart. At first, Murong-yu thought that the dangerous aura that shrouded his heart was this fierce beast. But he didn't expect that this fierce beast didn't even have the interest to look at him. With a whoosh, it shot past Murong-yu's side. A fierce beast at the peak of the initial Tao realm. If it wasn't this fierce beast, then who was it? Buzz, buzz, buzz. Murong-yu's soul trembled violently. His soul trembled. This meant that there was a possibility that Murong-yu would lose his life. Whoosh! Just as Murong-yu didn't know what to do, a sharp whistling sound came from the front. It was a gale. A black gust of wind was sweeping over at lightning speed. This black gale swept through the entire shattered star gorge and whistled. When Murong Yu saw the black gale, he already knew that it was this gale that made his soul tremble violently. Obviously, the fierce beast that had just whizzed past was also frantically fleeing because of this gale. Could this be the danger of the shattered star gorge? This thought flashed through Murong Yu's mind. With a thought, he was about to retreat and leave the shattered star gorge. However, from the moment the fierce beast appeared to the moment Murong Yu wanted to leave, only a moment had passed. But Murong Yu didn't have enough time. The black gale had already rushed in front of him. This level of speed definitely surpassed that of a Dao Lord. In fact, Murong Yu didn't even have enough time to enter Hichu Luo Shu. It's over. Murong Yu's face suddenly changed, and his figure flashed and rushed into a nearby cave. At the same time, he took out all kinds of treasures. Whoosh! The moment he entered the cave, the black gale had already whizzed past outside the cave. Murong Yu breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the black gale had only whistled past the cave's exterior. It didn't enter the cave. Otherwise, he didn't know if he could withstand this terrifying gale. However, even so, Murong Yu still broke out in a cold sweat, because he clearly felt the terror of the black gale. In an instant, the black gale caught up with the fierce beast at the peak of the initial Dao stage. Pooh! This fierce beast didn't have any resistance at all, and its huge body was suddenly torn into millions of pieces, disappearing into the black gale. Perhaps this was the origin of the name Shattered Star Gorge. It directly shattered everything. This black gale was comparable to the attack of a Dao Lord. It was even more terrifying than a Dao Lord. Fortunately, I entered the cave in time. Murong Yu was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat, and he secretly felt lucky. Presumably, the experts of the 100 Battles sect were also able to enter the depths of the Shattered Star Gorge because of these caves. Perhaps their vice sect leader and elder were trapped by these black gales? Murong Yu muttered to himself, but he didn't leave the cave. Instead, he sat cross-legged in the cave. He wanted to see the frequency of the black gale's appearance. Only by figuring out the frequency would Murong Yu dare to continue deeper. Otherwise, if he was accidentally swallowed by the black gale, he would end up like the fierce beast at the peak of the initial Dao stage. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the black gale to appear. The interval between appearances was about half an incense stick's time. Of course, there were only 2 gusts of wind, so he couldn't be sure. Thus, he continued to wait. After seeing the black gale appear several times in a row, Murong Yu finally determined that the frequency of the black gale's appearance was within half an incense stick's time. There were occasional errors, but the errors weren't big. As long as Murong Yu was careful and calculated the time, there shouldn't be any problems. Thus, he continued to go deeper. As he went deeper and deeper, in addition to calculating the time, Murong Yu also constantly discovered the surrounding caves. Once he encountered the black gale, he could only rely on these caves to hide. Along the way, although there were a few mistakes, it was more daunting than dangerous. Soon, Murong Yu entered the depths of the Shattered Star Gorge. However, along the way, he still didn't find the cultivators of the 100 Battles sect. Not to mention the cultivators of the 100 Battles sect. There weren't even many fierce beasts. The Shattered Star Gorge had an end. At this moment, Murong Yu was standing at the back of the Shattered Star Gorge, looking at the smooth stone wall in front of him that reached into the sky. Not far in front of him, there was an incomparably huge underground cave. He clearly saw that the black gale rushed out of this cave, and those people of the 100 Battles sect were also very likely in this cave. Is this black gale caused by a treasure, or is it formed naturally? If it's formed by a treasure, then what level is that treasure? If it's formed naturally, how did it form? What precious minerals are in the cave? Murong Yu thought in his heart, and a strong aura of death instantly enveloped his heart. Murong Yu's expression changed slightly. Half an incense stick's time was up. Thus, he jumped and went straight into a cave not far away. At this moment, a terrifying black gale whistled out from below the cave, After the black gale dissipated, Muronyu rushed into the bottomless cave. He had half an incense stick's time, and according to experience, in this half an incense stick's time, no black gale would appear. Therefore, after Muronyu entered the bottomless cave, he used his speed and ran all the way down. Chapter 2198. There were many caves in the cave, which gave Muronyu a chance to avoid the black gale. Otherwise, he would not be able to rush down directly. After dodging the black gale several times, two passages appeared in front of Muronyu. Two identical passageways. However, the stone walls on one side of the passage were very smooth, while the other side was somewhat rough. Muronyu already knew that the stone walls of the Shattered Star Gorge were so smooth because of the black gale. Therefore, in the two passages in front of him, the stone walls were smooth because of the black gale. And on the other side, there were no gale. Without any hesitation, Muronyu took a step forward and entered the passage of the rough stone walls. The stone walls emitted a faint fluorescent light, like starlight. Although it was dim, with Muronyu's current strength, it was enough to see everything in the passage clearly. On both sides of the passage, and even underground and above, there were traces of excavation. It seemed that the minerals discovered by the 100 Battles sect were in this passage. These were the traces of mining. Muronyu did a quick check, but didn't discover anything. Even if he punched, he could not break these stone walls at all. They were too hard. Even with Muronyu's initial Dao strength, he could not break them. Muronyu finally understood why the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect master and elder personally came to mind. It was not that they were worried, but that others could not dig these minerals at all. As he went deeper, Muronyu still remained vigilant. The deeper he went, the more traces of excavation there were. A large number of minerals must have been dug up by the 100 Battles sect. Whoosh! Suddenly, Muronyu's figure came to a halt. He took a step forward and disappeared from where he stood. He was actually hiding in a dark corner. Just after Muronyu dodged, a figure shot out from the passage. This was an expert of the initial Dao realm. Presumably, he was an elder of the 100 Battles sect, right? With a thought, two Dao Lord slaves were released from the Hichu Luoshu by Muronyu. Whoosh! Whoosh! After the two of them appeared, they did not say a word and immediately began to pursue. After a few breaths of time, Muronyu heard a dull sound. Then, the two slaves reappeared in his sight. One of them was carrying a person in his hand. It was the initial Dao realm elder of the 100 Battles sect who had just passed by Muronyu. Although the initial Dao realm was powerful, how could they be a match for two Dao lords? As a result, this person was tragically knocked unconscious before he could even react. Whoosh! The four of them disappeared at the same time and entered Hichu Luoshu. After entering Hichu Luoshu, Muronyu directly read the other party's memories. Soul suppressing stone. Muronyu finally knew what the minerals here were. It was called the Soul Suppressing Stone by the 100 Battles sect, a precious mineral that could be directly used to refine Dao artifacts. After instructing a Dao Lord expert to seal the 100 Battles sect elder, Muronyu slapped him awake. After waking up, the 100 Battles sect elder was at a loss at first, but he quickly reacted. Who are you? Why did you attack me? Do you know that I'm an elder of the 100 Battles sect? The 100 Battles sect elder looked at Muronyu with a gloomy expression. It's precisely because I know that you're an elder of the 100 Battles sect that I took you down. Cut the crap. Take out all the soul suppressing stones in your treasure space. Muronyu looked at the other party and said coldly. After reading the memories, Muronyu knew that this 100 Battles sect elder was in charge of transporting the soul-suppressing stones. It was not that there were too many soul-suppressing stones here, so many that the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect masters and elders could not store them in their space treasures. Instead, the soul-suppressing stones were very special, and each person could only store a portion. Otherwise, even if it was stored in the treasure space, it would still have a huge impact on the soul. Don't even think about it. The 100 Battles sect elder's expression changed abruptly as he roared. Do you think that even if you don't give it to me, I won't be able to get it? Even if I kill you, I'll still get your space treasure. So, I'll give you 10 breaths of time to think about it. Morong said indifferently with a look of indifference. The 100 Battles sect elder's expression was extremely gloomy. He knew that Morong was telling the truth. In the end, after a few breaths, he still took out all the soul-suppressing stones from his treasure space, not one less. He knew that Morong must have read his memories, so he did not dare to play any tricks. Buzz. When the soul-suppressing stones were thrown at Morong's feet, an inexplicable force suppressed Morong's soul out of thin air. At this moment, Morong's soul only felt a sense of drowsiness. It was as if this soul-suppressing stone could make Morong's soul fall into a deep sleep. Morong also finally knew why the 100 Battles sect people called these minerals soul-suppressing stones. It had the effect of suppressing one's soul. If the soul-suppressing stone was refined into a Tao artifact, with the terrifying attack power of a Tao artifact, coupled with the ability to suppress one's soul, even an initial Tao realm powerhouse with this Tao artifact could easily kill a Tao Lord realm powerhouse, right? This was really too terrifying. Morong also finally knew why the 100 Battles sect people would transport the soul-suppressing stones in batches. If too many were transported, one soul would be suppressed and might not even wake up. Terrifying. However, Morong also knew from the 100 Battles sect elders' memories that there were not many of these soul-suppressing stones. In terms of kilograms, there were less than 100 kilograms, and dozens of kilograms were all on this 100 Battles sect elder. However, now it had been obtained by Morong. Morong could not help but sneer in his heart. The 100 Battles sect destroyed more than 10,000 Shenzhen auction house, causing Shenzhen to suffer heavy losses. However, just these dozens of kilograms of the soul-suppressing stone had already exceeded Shenzhen's losses. Moreover, Morong also learned from the 100 Battles sect elders' memories that the 100 Battles sect had lost several great Tao realm powerhouses for this soul-suppressing stone. Now that even the soul-suppressing stone had been seized, and the vice sect master and elder were trapped inside, the 100 Battles sect's losses could not be said to be small. Who are you people? Seeing that Morong, a mere sky realm cultivator, wasn't affected by the soul-suppressing stone, the 100 Battles sect's elder couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and look at Morong in shock. Moreover, this was the 100 Battles planet, the headquarters of the 100 Battles sect. How could there be other Tao Lords here? And there were 2 of them. Are you blind? You don't even know Sect Master Shenzhen, Morong? One of the 2 Tao Lords glared at the 100 Battles sect elder and shouted, "Sect Master Shenzhen?" The 100 Battles sect elder was so scared that his body trembled. So, Shenzhen was actually so powerful? 2 Tao Lords, this strength was somewhat different from what the 100 Battles sect knew. Do you regret destroying our Shenzhen auction house? Morong sneered. That wasn't done by our 100 Battles sect. The 100 Battles sect elder would never admit it. However, Morong looked at him and sneered. I've read all your memories. The 100 Battles sect elder's expression changed again. Are you wondering if we'll add insult to injury and kill those elders of your 100 Battles sect? Morong seemed to know what the 100 Battles sect elder was thinking and suddenly sneered. The 100 Battles sect elder was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. This was what he was most worried about. After all, the vice sect master and some of the elders were trapped now. If Morong went to cause trouble, he might kill those trapped vice sect masters and elders. Morong did have this idea. If the 100 Battles sect didn't destroy the Shenzhen auction house, Morong might just get some soul-suppressing stones. However, the 100 Battles sect was so ruthless. If they did that, Morong would only return the favor. An eye for an eye. Immediately, Morong knocked out the 100 Battles sect elder with a punch and was about to leave Hichu Luo Shu. Morong, let's go out with you, one of the Tao Lords said. Although they were still Morong's slaves, Morong had never treated them as slaves. Moreover, they hadn't been Morong's slaves for long. However, they had witnessed the rapid rise of Morong and Shenzhen. Now, Morong already had the combat strength of the initial Tao realm. They believed that it wouldn't take long for him to reach or even surpass them. In 2 reincarnations, Murong would probably have reached the Downlord realm, or even the peak of the Downlord realm, right? Therefore, they were looking forward to it. Therefore, they didn't want Murong to die prematurely. Murong shook his head slightly. Stay in my treasure space. If I encounter danger, it won't be too late for you to take action. It's more convenient for me to act alone outside. After saying this, Murong disappeared into Hichu Luo Shu without waiting for the 3 to reply. The 3 Downlords were left behind, exchanging glances with each other. After appearing in the passage, Murong continued forward. From a Memories of the 100 Battles sect elder, Murong knew that there was no danger in this passage. Therefore, Murong went straight ahead and soon reached the end of the passage. At the end of the passage was an incomparably huge space. There were many caves here, densely packed like a beehive. If someone with trypophobia saw this scene, they would probably feel extremely uncomfortable, right? Several experts appeared in Murong's line of sight, all of them frowning. One of them was the 100 Battles sect's vice sect master, Bai Hong. What should we do? A shattering storm suddenly appeared in the mine. It's only hovering there. We can't go in at all, and the people inside can't come out at all. An elder of the 100 Battles sect said with a frown. Bai Hong and the others had gloomy expressions. They had discovered a soulstone mine earlier. The soulstone inside was more than the sum of the soulstones they had obtained before. Therefore, their vice sect master and some elders had gone into mine. However, they didn't know that the shattering storm had suddenly appeared and trapped them in the depths of the mine. Chapter 2199. The shattering storm was the black gale Murong had encountered before. The black gale was known as the shattering storm by the 100 Battles sect and the entire 100 Battles planet. It meant a storm that could shatter everything. It truly lived up to its name. Murong had personally witnessed a great Dao realm vicious beast being torn into millions of pieces by the shattering storm. As they spoke, Bai Hong and the others glanced worriedly at one of the passageways from time to time. This made Murong certain that the mineral vein they had encountered was that passageway. The 100 Battles sect's deputy sect leader and elder must have been trapped inside. However, what exactly was going on inside? Murong was confused by Bai Hong and the others' words. If there was a shattering storm inside, why didn't it appear? Why was it only entrenched in the passageway? How many mineral veins were there? Why did the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect leader and elder want to dig it out at all costs? Murong continued to hide in the dark while Bai Hong and the others continued to talk. They were not on guard at all. In fact, this was the 100 Battles planet, the headquarters of the 100 Battles sect. Moreover, there were few people in the Shattered Star Gorge, and there were great Dao realm powerhouses of the 100 Battles sect guarding outside. Who could break in? Therefore, through their conversation, Murong had a rough idea of the situation. According to Bai Hong and the others' speculation, the mineral vein in the passageway had a large amount of soul-suppressing stone and could be used to refine 10 Dao artifacts. Moreover, these soul-suppressing stones were purer and more advanced than those they had obtained before. If the soul-suppressing stone that Murong had stolen could only be used to refine elementary Dao treasures, then the soul-suppressing stone in the mine they had discovered could be used to refine Dao treasures of the Dao Lord level or even Dao Lord level. If the 100 Battles sect refined a Dao Master level Dao artifact, wouldn't they be able to dominate the world? Even though the Prophet Ancestor's strength was heaven-defying, he was no match for a Dao Master level Dao artifact in the 100 Battles sect. Then, with the 100 Battles sect's character, they would definitely conquer the world. At that time, Shenzhen would definitely be one of their targets. This was something Murong did not want to see. Moreover, Murong also wanted the soul-suppressing stone, which could be used to refine Dao Master level Dao artifacts. Therefore, no matter what, he had to obtain the soul-suppressing stone. Even if he couldn't get it, he couldn't let the 100 Battles sect get it. If it really didn't work out, he would have to consider whether or not to send out Patriarch on E. You guys stay here. I'll go in and take a look. After a while, Bai Hong finally couldn't help but enter the tunnel with the mineral vein. The other elders of the 100 Battles sect sat down cross-legged on the spot. Murong Yu's heart moved. He also wanted to go in and see what was going on. Given the 3 Dao Lords in the Hichu, Luoshu, perhaps they would be able to seize the soul-quelling stone? However, those sitting cross-legged outside the passageway were existences at the level of 100 Battles sect's elders. They were all great Dao realm powerhouses. However, they were all at the initial Dao realm. Given the power of Murong Yu's 3 Dao Lord slaves, they should be able to silently and soundlessly crush them. However, that might alarm Bai Hong and the others. No one knew if there were any Dao Lord powerhouses in the passageway that were not trapped. If they were alarmed, Murong Yu's side would not be a match for them at all. In the end, Murong Yu could not suppress his restless heart and slowly approached the passageway while invisible. However, the 3 Dao Lord powerhouses in the Hichu Luoshu were already prepared. Once Murong Yu was discovered, they would immediately take action to suppress those 100 Battles sect elders. In fact, Murong Yu was still too cautious. Although those people from the 100 Battles sect were all initial Dao realm powerhouses, Murong Yu's combat strength was not bad either. He had already reached initial Dao realm level 5. With his combat strength, coupled with the heaven-defying 9 syllables true incantation, Murong Yu's stealth ability was not something that cultivators of the same realm could discover. Therefore, Murong Yu easily entered the passageway. After entering the passageway and walking for a distance, Murong Yu increased his speed. However, this passageway was not deep. Not long after he ran, he had already encountered Bai Hong and a few other elder-level existences of the 100 Battles sect. At this point, Murong Yu had already seen more than 10 great Dao realm powerhouses. The 100 Battles sect strength was indeed not bad. However, compared to the 60 experts in Murong Yu's hands, it was nothing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In front of Bai Hong, there was a constant whistling sound. Murong Yu looked over and saw a large storm of fragments filling the entire passageway, directly blocking the entire passageway. There was no gap at all. Otherwise, with the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect master's ability, he would have come out long ago. However, because of the storm of fragments, Murong Yu was unable to see the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect master and the others behind the storm of fragments. From the information he obtained from the conversation between Bai Hong and the others, Murong Yu knew that the storm of fragments had suddenly appeared after the 100 Battles sect's deputy sect master and the others went to mine. It had appeared out of thin air, and even the Dao Lord Realm Deputy Sect Master was unable to react in time before he was trapped within it. Murong Yu observed for a moment and noticed the source of the storm of fragments. There were 2 more passageways on both sides of the passageway. The storm of fragments had appeared from the passageway on the left to the passageway Murong Yu was in, and then it directly entered the passageway on the right. During this process, no storm of fragments had spread out. So, Bai Hong and the others dared to approach the storm of fragments. However, they didn't dare get too close. Otherwise, with their strength, they would be easily torn apart by the storm of fragments. If I'm able to resist these storms of fragments, then my body has definitely attained the Dao Lord realm, or even a higher realm. This crazy thought suddenly appeared in Murong Yu's mind, and then he was shocked by himself. With his current strength, he absolutely couldn't give it a try. Otherwise, it would only lead to a tragedy. Perhaps he could give it a try once he attained the Dao Lord realm. But how exactly were these storms of fragments formed? Was it a treasure? A faint thought appeared in Murong Yu's mind. He felt that it was very likely that these storms of fragments had appeared from some sort of treasure. Moreover, that treasure was at least a Dao Lord Realm Dao artifact. It was even possible that it was a Dao Lord Realm Dao artifact. Otherwise, it wouldn't emit such terrifying storms of fragments. It would be great if I can obtain that treasure. Let's not talk about whether or not I'll be able to unleash the full power of that Dao artifact. Even if I can just unleash these fragmentary storms, I'll be able to easily kill a Dao Lord. Murong Yu frowned as he pondered. Whether that treasure existed or not was still a question, and it was too far away. Now, he was thinking about how to obtain those soul suppression stones, break through the stone wall, and sneak over. If it was possible, Bai Hong and the others would have done a long time ago. So, this method wouldn't work. Suddenly, an extremely strong aura of death instantly enveloped Murong Yu's heart. Murong Yu was shocked, and he thought that he'd been discovered by Bai Hong and the others. But in next to no time, he noticed that there was no killing intent enveloping him at all, and Bai Hong and the others were still looking at the storms of fragments with worry. If it wasn't them, then who was it? The aura of death was growing stronger and stronger. It was even to the extent that Murong Yu's soul started to tremble violently. When Murong Yu looked at those storms of fragments that didn't seem unusual at all, his heart couldn't help but tremble. It's the storms of fragments. His intuition told him that even though those storms of fragments didn't seem unusual at all, it was definitely them. Without any hesitation, Murong Yu entered the Hichu Luo Shu, and then he teleported away from this passageway. After he left, the aura of death in Murong Yu's heart finally vanished. It was definitely related to the storms of fragments. Murong Yu was sure of the source of the danger. Whoosh! Whoosh! Sure enough, in the next moment, Murong Yu heard a terrifying gust of wind coming from the passageway. And in the next moment, whoosh! 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 Bai Hong and the others rushed out of the cave with a panicked look on their faces. After leaving the passageway, he lifted the two elders who were sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the passageway, and then quickly rushed out of the shattered Star's Gorge. What's going on? Didn't the storms of fragments just break out? The two elders of the 100 Battles sect outside didn't react. The passageway with the mineral vein suddenly broke out with a terrifying storm of fragments. One of the elders of the 100 Battles sect who rushed out behind Bai Hong was too late and was already swept up by the storm of fragments. Immediately, Murong Yu, who was hiding in the cave, saw that the elder of the 100 Battles sect only had time to let out a scream before his whole body was torn into millions of pieces. Even the Yuan Qi and treasures on his body didn't fall off. It was obvious that these things were all torn into pieces by the storm of fragments. Bai Hong and the others' faces suddenly changed, and they quickly rushed into a cave to avoid the outbreak of fragments. Murong Yu also went deep into the cave, and his divine thought was connected to the transmission point in Hichu Luo Shu. Once he felt that something was wrong, he would immediately teleport. Half a day. After a full half a day, the terrifying storm of fragments finally stopped. It should be known that a normal storm of fragments would only last for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Whoosh! After the storm of fragments, Murong Yu didn't feel any danger anymore. Therefore, he rushed out of the cave where he was hiding and then rushed into the passageway with the mineral vein. At the same time, Bai Hong and the others also appeared, and they quickly moved towards the passageway. However, their ability to sense danger was far inferior to Murong Yu's. Therefore, their speed was also far inferior to Murong Yu's. Because he didn't feel any danger, Murong Yu flew as fast as he could, and soon arrived at the place where the storm of fragments was. But at this time, the storm of fragments had disappeared. Without the slightest hesitation, Murong Yu had already charged in. Not long after the storm of fragments, it was the end of the passageway. At this time, there was no one at the end of the passageway. The deputy sect leader and those elders of the 100 Battles sect had probably been torn into pieces by the storm of fragments that lasted for half a day. This time, the 100 Battles sect could be said to have suffered heavy losses. However, Murong Yu didn't come here to confirm whether these people were dead or not. He came here for the soul-suppressing stone. Sure enough, the soul-suppressing stone was not torn into pieces by the storm. At this time, it was piled up on the ground in piles. Chapter 2200. Buzz. A strong suppressive power pressed down. Even though Murong Yu's soul had reached the celestial realm, he still felt like he was about to fall asleep. He was suppressed by the power of the soul-suppressing stone. Murong Yu looked at the soul-suppressing stone that weighed at least 1,000 kilograms in shock. These soul-suppressing stones were piled up on the ground in an irregular shape, as if they had fallen from a high place. They were a little scattered. They must have fallen from the treasure spaces of the 100 Battles sect's vice sect leaders and elders. After they were torn apart by the shattering storm, their space treasures, and even everything in them except the soul-suppressing stone, were torn apart, right? Therefore, Murong Yu didn't think that their souls could be unscathed under the suppression of so many soul-suppressing stones. Without saying a word, Murong Yu waved his hand and immediately put the 1,000 kilograms of soul-suppressing stones into the Hichu Luo Shu. The Hichu Luo Shu was huge. After Murong Yu suppressed these soul-suppressing stones in different places, the pressure emitted by the soul-suppressing stones could no longer affect Murong Yu. The moment Murong Yu put the soul-suppressing stones into the Hichu Luo Shu, a series of complicated footsteps came from the passage not far away. Bai Hong and the others were about to arrive. Murong Yu let out a sneer as his figure flashed and disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already in the Hichu Luo Shu. But just as he was about to teleport away, Murong Yu's thoughts stirred. Immediately, he opened the Hichu Luo Shu. At the same time, he ordered the 3 Dao Lord Realm slaves to increase their power to the limit, ready to attack at any time. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was at this moment that several figures rushed in from the outside. It was Bai Hong and the others. Now's the time. Attack, kill them for me. Murong Yu in the Hichu Luo Shu roared. As soon as the words left his mouth, the 3 Dao Lords attacked. Rumble. At virtually the same time, the 3 Dao Lords unleashed their most terrifying attacks. Terrifying power poured out from the He-Tu and the inscription of the Luo. It directly enveloped Bai Hong and the other experts of the 100 Battles sect and bombarded them with overwhelming power. Damn it! Defense! Quick, defend! Bai Hong was the first to realize that something was wrong. With a furious roar, he took out all his treasures in an attempt to block the attacks of the 3 Dao Lords. However, the other initial Dao elders weren't as fast. In addition, Murong Yu and the other 2 Dao Lords had attacked at the perfect moment. As soon as they entered this place, before they could even stand firm, they discovered that the vice sect leaders and elders were already dead, and their minds were in a daze. Terrifying power poured down like a storm. Although it wasn't as terrifying as the shattering storm, it wasn't something that anyone could withstand. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, the elders of the 100 Battles sect who were only at the initial Dao realm were blasted into nothingness by the strongest attacks of the 3 Dao Lords. Although Bai Hong and the other Dao Lords reacted in time, they only had time to defend and couldn't counterattack at all. In fact, because they had to endure the most powerful attacks of the 3 Dao Lords, Bai Hong and the others felt their blood roil, and they were sent flying. One of the Dao Lords even spat out a mouthful of blood. Hee, with a cold laugh. Hichu Luo Shu teleported away from the passage. Only the gloomy face Bai Hong and the other Dao Lords were left behind. Kill! Bai Hong roared and unleashed his strongest attack, blasting towards the place where Hichu Luo Shu had been. At the same time, the other Dao Lords reacted and followed up with their own attacks. However, Murong Yu had long since left this place. Even if Bai Hong and the others blasted the sky apart, they wouldn't be able to affect Murong Yu at all. In the end, Bai Hong and the others' attacks covered the entire passage, but they were still ineffective. They all knew that the person who attacked them had already left. However, why would an expert attack them here? Was that person related to the Shattering Storm? Were the 100 Battles sect's vice sect master and those elders killed by the Shattering Storm or Murong Yu? Were those soul-suppressing stones also snatched away by the other party? One question after another hovered above Bai Hong and the others' heads, causing them to be filled with doubts and puzzled. The reason why Murong Yu attacked, apart from severely injuring the 100 Battles sect, was to create such doubts. Wasn't the 100 Battles sect very impressive? Didn't they destroy more than 10,000 Shenzhen auction houses? Murongyu was here for revenge. And the soul-suppressing stones that Murongyu obtained and the 100 battle sex losses were already tens of thousands, hundreds of millions of times more than the Shenzhen auction houses. After all, the death of one initial Dao expert was already very heavy, let alone multiple. Those killed by Murongyu and those killed by the Shattering Storm. The 100 battle sect had lost at least a dozen initial Dao experts this time. And there was at least one Dao Lord expert. It was the 100 battles sect's vice sect master. A Dao Lord expert and a dozen initial Dao experts had fallen. This was definitely a huge blow to the 100 battles sect. After all, there were only a few Dao Lords and initial Dao experts in the 100 battles sect. Now that so many of them had fallen, even the 100 battles sect could not bear it. Moreover, the soul-suppressing stone that caused their deaths had also been snatched away. It would be strange if Bai Hong and the others did not vomit blood after their efforts were in vain. Bastard! If I find out which bastard did this to us, I'll make him pay the price, even if I have to use all the power of the 100 battles sect. A Dao Lord expert of the 100 battles sect, who seemed to be a vice sect master, roared with a ferocious expression. Unfortunately, we don't even know who did it, Bai Hong said with a sullen expression. No matter what, they would never suspect Murongyu, because Murongyu did not know it all. Even if he knew, he did not have that many experts and powerful methods. On the other side, Murongyu had already teleported back to the Shenzhen auction houses. Murongyu, if we focused our attacks on one of the Dao Lords just now, they would have died. Why do we only kill their initial Dao experts? In the Hichu Luo Shu, the three Dao Lords looked at Murongyu in confusion. Given their strength, if they focused their attacks on Bai Hong and the other Dao Lords, even if they reacted extremely quickly, they would still not be able to withstand the attacks of the three and would be killed. However, Murongyu had not allowed them to do so. Are you really so confident that you can kill Bai Hong and the other Dao Lords in one blow? Then, let me ask you this. If one of you was ambushed by three Dao Lords, would you be able to survive? Well, I wouldn't be able to kill them instantly. If they kept ambushing and strengthening their attacks, I might die. However, I might still be able to survive. One of the Dao Lords hesitated for a moment, then slowly said. The other two Dao Lords nodded slightly as well. Isn't that right? You have life-saving methods, but Bai Hong and the others have life-saving methods as well. Moreover, they have more Dao Lords than we do. If we can't kill them in one blow, then it's very likely that we'll be the ones to die. Thus, our target is the initial Dao experts, not the Dao Lords. We have full confidence in killing the initial Dao experts. However, we have less than a 10% chance of killing them. How should we choose? Murongyu laughed. The three Dao Lords were stunned. Then, they looked at Murongyu with admiration. Murongyu's idea of ambushing Bai Hong and the others had come up in an instant. However, to make Murongyu think of so many things in an instant, this ability was indeed not something that the three Dao Lords could compare to. The three of them finally understood why Murongyu could single-handedly bring Shenzhen from an ordinary faction in the cultivation world to a colossus. This ability, coupled with his heaven-defying talent and aptitude, was not strange. Murongyu inwardly chuckled when he saw their expressions. These Dao Lords were his slaves, but they were only slaves under an agreement. They would only stay by his side for 2 reincarnation cycles. Although Murongyu now had complete control over their souls and could make them his slaves for the rest of their lives, Murongyu did not want to do this. However, Murongyu didn't want to do that. He wasn't someone who would go back on his word. However, he did want these slaves to follow him for the rest of their lives and become Shenzhen's for the rest of their lives. In that case, Murongyu could only use other methods to convince them. However, these people were all elites of the Great Dao Realm. They were all proud and arrogant and would not submit to others so easily. However, Murongyu believed that in the end, these people would willingly choose to stay and become part of Shenzhen. He was confident. After releasing the 3 of them from Hichu Luo Shu, Murongyu did not leave Hichu Luo Shu. Instead, he fell into deep thought. On the surface, Shenzhen did not obtain anything from questioning the Hundred Battles sect this time. He was even humiliated by the Hundred Battles sect. However, in reality, Morong had already gotten back at them 10,000 times, 100 million times. Although the Hundred Battles sect did not know that it was Morong who did it, it did not matter either. If the Hundred Battles sect still continued, Morong did not mind continuing to smear them. However, the Hundred Battles sect suffered heavy losses now. Presumably, they would not continue to be arrogant for a long time, right? However, Morong was wrong. This was a story for later. Let's not talk about it for now. These soul-suppressing stones should be able to refine Tao artifacts. With my artifact refining ability, it should be no problem. However, my realm is still too low. The success rate is not high. Looking at those soul-suppressing stones, Morong pondered in his heart. Along the way, Morong had never given up on artifact refining and pill refining. At this time, his artifact refining and pill refining ability had already reached the limit that could be reached at this stage. In the same realm, no one could surpass him. The success rate is too low, and the soul-suppressing stones are limited. Right now, I definitely can't refine a new Tao artifact. However, I wonder if I can repair the Chaos Blade. If I add a soul-suppressing stone to the Chaos Blade, then apart from the power of Chaos, it also has the ability to suppress souls. At that time, when the blade slashes out, even the powerhouses of the soul race will tremble, right? Chapter 2201. At this moment, Morong had already found out about the Sacred Cosmos Alliance from old ancestor Hanyi's clone. Under the control of the Soul Race, the Sacred Universe Alliance had been established. The reason why the Alliance could succeed in such a short time was related to the pressure from the Martial Tao Universe and the Divine Universe, as well as the strength of the Soul Race. Since it was related to the safety of their own universe, the various powers had no choice but to agree to form the Sacred Universe Alliance. Furthermore, it was the Soul Race that had personally stepped in. What kind of race was the Soul Race? It was one of the most powerful forces in the Sacred Universe. There were countless Tao Lords amongst them. There were even peak Tao Lords among them. Not many forces in the entire Sacred Universe had such strength. Not long after the Alliance was launched, some top forces in the Sacred Universe responded one after another, expressing their willingness to become a member of the Alliance. However, to Morong-Yu's disappointment, the Great Void Tribe was still nowhere to be seen. Morong-Yu even suspected that the Great Void Tribe had disappeared from the Holy Universe, just like the Chaotic Tribe. However, the Great Void Tribe did not appear, which made the Soul Tribe elites heave a sigh of relief. The Great Void Tribe was also one of the most powerful forces in the Holy Universe. However, in terms of overall strength, the Great Void Tribe was more powerful than the Soul Tribe. If the Great Void Tribe also joined the Alliance, then the Soul Tribe might not be able to control the Alliance. This was something that none of the ancestors of the Soul Race wanted to see happen. Therefore, the Soul Tribe was even happier that the Great Void Tribe did not appear. After Morong-Yu knew about this, he sneered again and again. Whether it was the human race, the Soul Race, or the Yao race, as long as there were living beings, there was never a lack of power struggles. Now that the Sacred Universe was on the brink of death, Morong-Yu couldn't help but feel ashamed that the Soul Race and other forces were still fighting for power. However, Morong-Yu just sneered. The Alliance's matters were a little distant from him and basically had nothing to do with him. Therefore, he only knew about the Alliance through the clone of Forefather Hun E and didn't do much. After all, even if the sky fell, there were tall people to block it. Morong-Yu still lacked a lot of power, so he didn't want to shoulder the heavy responsibility of saving the Sacred Universe. That would crush him. Morong-Yu decisively put the matter of the Alliance aside and took out the Chaos Blade. Although this Tao artifact of unknown grade was broken, it still exuded a terrifying pressure. The power of chaos lingered around the blade. Even though Morong-Yu was the wielder of the Blade of Chaos, the power within his body was thrown into disarray by the power of chaos. With one slash, the initial Tao cultivator was unable to resist at all. The power within his body was disrupted by the power of chaos, causing his strength to plummet. However, the Chaos Blade was not a complete Chaos Blade. Right now, he was only able to unleash the power of a beginner. Against a Tao Lord, it would be completely useless. Therefore, Murongyu planned to fuse the soul-suppressing stone into the Chaos Blade, so that the Chaos Blade would have both the power of chaos and the power of soul-suppressing. At that time, the power of chaos would disrupt the opponent's power, while the power of soul suppression would suppress the opponent's soul. The two-pronged approach would definitely achieve a terrifying effect. However, this was only Murongyu's imagination. Whether the soul-suppressing stone could be fused into the Chaos Blade was still a question. Moreover, even after the fusion, would it have the power of soul suppression? It was also unknown. I hope so. Murongyu thought in his heart as he stabbed the Chaos Blade into the ground beside him. At the same time, with a thought, dozens of kilograms of high-grade soul-suppressing stone appeared in front of him, piling up into a small mountain. Refined, Murongyu raised his power to the limit, covering all the soul-suppressing stone, and began to refine it. However, the soul-suppressing stone was a special mineral found in the Shattered Star Gorge. How could it be refined so easily? Therefore, after half a day, there was still no movement from the soul-suppressing stone. However, Murongyu was already mentally prepared. Therefore, he directly sped up the time in the Hichu Luoshu world. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years. After a full 100 years, Murongyu finally saw the soul-suppressing stone showing signs of melting. However, it was only the surface layer. Finally, there was an effect. Murongyu rejoiced in his heart and immediately focused on refining it. After 1,000 years, more than 50% of the soul-suppressing stone had been fused. After the fusion, the soul-suppressing stone was not like other minerals, which were like molten iron. The melted soul-suppressing stone was like mercury, but it was crystal clear and looked very magnificent. However, if that was all, it would be fine. The melted soul-suppressing stone contained an even more terrifying power of soul suppression. This was because Murongyu purified the soul-suppressing stone again in the process of refining. After a full 10,000 years, Murongyu had finally completely refined the dozens of kilograms of soul-suppressing stone in front of him. However, it was less than 10 kilograms, and the 10 kilograms less were the impurities that were refined out. However, these soul-suppressing stones were still not the purest. Murongyu used another 1,000 years to refine these liquid soul-suppressing stones again. This time, another 20 kilograms less. Murongyu did not feel any pain. After all, what was missing were impurities. Of course, the purer the soul-suppressing stone was, the better. However, Murongyu knew that there were still a lot of impurities in the soul-suppressing stone here. However, with his current strength, he could no longer continue to refine it. After recovering his essence, energy, and spirit to their peak, Murongyu held the Chaos Edge in his hand. At the same time, under his control, the liquid soul-suppressing stone, which was like mercury, was suspended in front of him. Now, he was not refining, but fusing the soul-suppressing stone into the Chaos Blade. Therefore, what Murongyu had to do was very simple. He just had to fuse the liquid soul-suppressing stone into the Chaos Blade. However, although this was very simple, it was also very complicated and difficult. Whoosh! Murongyu moved his mind, and a large amount of liquid soul-suppressing stone wrapped the Chaos Blade. Buzz! As if it knew something, the Chaos Blade in Murongyu's hand trembled violently at this moment. Streams of chaotic energy burst out from the blade and enveloped the entire blade of chaos. The liquid soul-suppressing stone could not pass through this protective layer at all, so it could not be fused into the Chaos Blade at all. Murongyu could not help but feel a headache coming on. Although the Chaos Blade did not have an artifact spirit, as an extremely powerful Tao artifact. Although it was a broken Tao artifact, the Chaos Blade still had its own pride it did not allow any other materials to enter its body. This was a huge problem. Muronyu tried to control it, but the Chaos Blade did not care about him at all. The liquid soul-suppressing stone could not even touch the blade, so how could it be fused? In the end, Muronyu became angry and stabbed the Chaos Blade into the ground with one hand. Chaos Blade, you're just a broken weapon now. Although your strength is not bad, do you think you're a match for a Dao Monarch, or even a Dao Master-level Dao artifact? Do you still want to fuse with the rest of your body? Do you still want to return to your peak state? Do you still want to take revenge? The soul-suppressing stone only strengthens you. It will make you even stronger. Only when you become stronger, and only when I become stronger, can you find the rest of your body. Otherwise, you can only be a broken weapon for the rest of your life. Muronyu roared angrily. If it were not for the fact that the Chaos Blade did not have an artifact spirit, he would definitely pull out the artifact spirit and give it a good beating. If he could beat the artifact spirit. Buzz! Before Muronyu's voice fell, the Chaos Blade trembled violently. Waves of energy constantly dissipated toward Muronyu. It seemed to be speaking. Muronyu could not comprehend such profound mental waves. However, he roughly knew what it meant. At this time, the chaotic energy on the surface of the Chaos Blade had disappeared without a trace. At this time, the liquid soul-suppressing stone had already come into contact with the blade. In fact, Muronyu saw that the liquid soul-suppressing stone had already begun to slowly seep into the Chaos Blade. That's right, after being educated by Muronyu, the Chaos Blade had finally been enlightened and actually began to actively fuse with it. Now, Muronyu basically had nothing to do with it. Therefore, he was basically just watching from the side. He was a little nervous. He did not know if the Chaos Blade would have the power to suppress souls after fusing with the soul-suppressing stone. Buzz! At this moment, the Chaos Blade trembled violently, and another mental wave was transmitted over. This time, Muronyu finally understood what it meant. There was not enough liquid soul-suppressing stone. Swoosh! Without any hesitation, Muronyu transferred 200 to 300 kilograms of soul-suppressing stone and began to refine it. Although the soul-suppressing stone was precious and could be used to refine a Dao Master-level Dao artifact. However, if he could upgrade the Chaos Blade and make it stronger, Muronyu would not hesitate even if he had to use up thousands of kilograms of soul-suppressing stone. Thus, Muronyu was refining the soul-suppressing stone, while the Chaos Blade was fusing with the liquid soul-suppressing stone. Division of labor. Year after year, 100,000 years passed just like that. At this moment, Muronyu was refining the last 50 kilograms of soul-suppressing stone. Meanwhile, the Chaos Blade was still fusing with the soul-suppressing stone. Although the soul-suppressing stone had already fused with a few hundred kilograms of soul-suppressing stone, Muronyu did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. On the contrary, his face was brimming with smiles. At this moment, although the soul-suppressing stone had not successfully advanced, the aura it emitted was at least dozens of times stronger than before. Most importantly, the blade of the Chaos Blade exuded a terrifying soul-suppressing power. The power of soul-suppressing and the power of chaos resonated with each other, intimidating one's soul and soul. It was incomparably terrifying. Moreover, Muronyu had a premonition that the Chaos Blade was about to advance. Once it advanced, the power of the Chaos Blade would skyrocket again. Chapter 2202. Buzz. Finally, after the Chaos Blade devoured the soul-suppressing stone, it finally advanced. The blade of chaos trembled for a moment before bursting with a dazzling black light. The light soared into the sky, instantly illuminating every inch of space in the Hichu Luoshu world. At the same time, an extremely terrifying pressure emanated from the blade of chaos like a tidal wave, sweeping in all directions. As the owner of the Chaos Blade, Muronyu's body trembled slightly from the impact of this terrifying aura. In fact, The qi and blood in his body surged like a raging river. It was extremely terrifying. This was because Murong was the owner of the Chaos Blade, so the effect of the Chaos Blade on him was almost negligible. However, even so, Murong's qi and blood were still surging. One could imagine how terrifying this aura was. Puff, puff, puff. The space around Murong cracked under the impact of the Chaos Blade's aura, and large patches of it began to shatter. Moreover, the shattering of space was rapidly spreading in all directions. If possible, Murong even felt that this aura could shatter all the space in the entire Hichu Luoshu. Thus, he reached out his large hand and grabbed the Chaos Blade in his hand. With a thought, the strange phenomenon of the Chaos Blade disappeared. At this moment, what appeared in Murong's hand was a broken and incomplete Dao artifact. The Dao artifact was completely black and simple. If it was thrown on the road, no one would take a second look at it. However, this broken weapon was a truly powerful Dao artifact. A Dao Lord level Dao artifact. Murong could clearly feel the level of the Chaos Blade. From the aura of the Chaos Blade, it was at least 100 times stronger than before. Moreover, this was only on the surface. Now that the Chaos Blade had the power of the soul-suppressing stone, it should be even stronger than before. With a thought, Hichu Luoshu teleported away from Shenzhen. Following that, Murong also left Hichu Luoshu. At this moment, he was standing in an endless void. There were specks of starlight outside, and huge and barren origin stars were suspended in the endless starry sky, shining brightly. Murong held the Chaos Blade in his hand, and the power in his body rapidly increased to the maximum. Under his control, a large amount of power poured into the Chaos Blade. Bang! The Chaos Blade shook violently, and then spat out an extremely huge blade light. Above the saber radiance, the power of chaos and the power of soul suppression were mixed together, and a terrifying aura flickered. Swoosh! Murong aimed his blade at one of the origin stars in the distance and fiercely slashed at it. Swoosh! An incomparably huge blade light instantly shot out from the blade of chaos. Wherever it passed, the void was directly cut apart. In the blink of an eye, the huge sword light slashed the target origin star. Poof! The sword light swept past the origin star, and then it went on to the second origin star, the third origin star. In the end, the sword light of the Chaos Blade slashed 100 origin stars consecutively, and then it disappeared because of the lack of power. What happened? Murong was a little disappointed, although the sword light had slashed through the origin stars. However, the origin stars didn't seem to have any movement. They didn't explode at all. Could it be that the sword light had split the target origin star in half? Murong took a step forward, crossed the distance of billions of starry sky, and appeared on the first target origin star. Poof! Just as he stepped on the origin star under his feet gave out a soft thud. Then, it suddenly exploded and turned into dust, disappearing into the endless starry sky. Murong was a little shocked. It turns out that the sword light wasn't useless, but it had already turned the origin star into dust. However, after the sword light passed, the origin star still maintained its original appearance. This method is too terrifying. It was easy to blast an origin star into dust. However, not everyone could blast a primordial star into smithereens and keep it in its original state. Murong was certain that not even a Dao Lord would be able to accomplish such a feat with a sway of his body. Murong appeared on the next origin star. As expected, this origin star and even the 98 origin stars behind it had been blasted into dust by the Chaos Blade, but they maintained their original appearance. While he was shocked, Murong had a preliminary understanding of the power of the Chaos Blade. However, he wondered how it would fare against a Dao Lord expert. As Murong pondered, he returned to Shenzhen. He found an early-stage Dao Lord slave. What? You want to spar with me? Hearing that Murong wanted to spar with him, the Dao Lord expert couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't that he looked down on Murong, but Murong's combat strength had risen to initial Dao Stage 5. However, Even an initial Tao Stage 9 wouldn't be able to withstand the power of his finger, let alone initial Tao Stage 5. The difference between realms and strength was such a huge gap. Go ahead and attack. Murongyu was the Tao Lord Expert's master. Although the Tao Lord Expert didn't think much of it, he still didn't refuse. Murongyu smiled. He didn't feel angry about it. If it were him, he would have the same reaction. However, this Tao Lord Expert was destined to suffer a tragedy. Therefore, he held the Chaos Blade and pointed at the Tao Lord Expert from afar. I'll start attacking. Go ahead. The Tao Lord Expert nodded. He didn't even take a defensive posture. Murongyu didn't say anything else. The truth was the best way to talk. Therefore, he began to pour his power into the Chaos Blade. Buzz! The Chaos Blade immediately erupted with the power of a Tao Lord-level Tao artifact. The Tao Lord Expert's expression changed slightly. He could already sense that the Chaos Blade was emitting an aura similar to his. This is a Tao Lord-level Tao artifact. The Tao Lord Expert looked at the Chaos Blade in Murongyu's hand, but he still didn't take it seriously. After all, although a Tao artifact was powerful, how much power it could unleash still depended on who was wielding it. However, this was only the beginning. The power of the Chaos Blade was getting stronger and stronger, gradually surpassing that of the Tao Lord Expert. That wasn't the most important thing. So what if it surpassed him? Even Tao Lords would be able to easily dodge this attack. However, the aura emitted by the Chaos Blade made his soul tremble. With the Chaos Blade as the center, gusts of wind constantly blew around it. In fact, Murongyu and the Tao Lord Expert both knew that this wasn't a real wind. Instead, these gusts of wind were chaotic power. The power was rioting, forming a gust of wind. Apart from that, a soul-suppressing power made the Tao Lord Expert's soul feel uneasy and dangerous. In fact, when facing Murongyu, the Tao Lord Expert's soul even felt like it was about to fall asleep. The Tao Lord Expert had always kept his soul awake, but his soul always felt like falling asleep uncontrollably. This wasn't a good thing. I'm attacking. At this moment, Murongyu roared. The saber slashed down towards the Tao Lord Expert with all its might. Swoosh! An incomparably huge saber light, containing a terrifying power that could destroy the world, tore through the void, locked onto the Tao Lord Expert, and slashed down rapidly. At this moment, the Tao Lord Expert's heart was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of danger. He actually felt a sense of danger from it. The Tao Lord Expert turned pale with fright and immediately took it seriously. However, this wasn't enough. Along with the swift and violent slash of the saber light, his soul was on the verge of fainting. With a thought, he took out a magic treasure. At the same time, the Tao Lord Expert roared and punched the saber light with all his might. In a flash, the saber light and the Tao Lord Expert's fist collided in the starry sky. Boom! After a shocking explosion, the huge saber light was directly shattered. However, the Tao Lord Expert didn't have it easy either. His entire fist was blasted apart. A terrifying shockwave spread rapidly in all directions from the point of impact. Everywhere it passed, the surrounding void, planets, and even the origin star were quickly destroyed. Murongyu's expression changed slightly. Then he took a step forward and quickly retreated. He didn't want to be swept up by these terrifying shockwaves. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. On the other side, after the Tao Lord Expert's fist was blasted apart, he didn't even have time to react before his entire body was blasted by the terrifying shockwave. Immediately, he was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. In fact, Murongyu could clearly see that the Tao Lord Expert couldn't help but spit out a large mouthful of blood halfway. After a long time, everything calmed down. The Tao Lord Expert quickly appeared in front of Murongyu. However, at this moment, his clothes were torn and his hair was disheveled. He still had a shocked expression on his face. Sacred Lord, the power of your slash is too terrifying. If there are a few more slashes, I won't be able to withstand it at all. You already have the strength of a Tao Lord. As he spoke, The Tao Lord expert stared at the Chaos Blade in Murong Yu's hand in surprise. Murong Yu smiled slightly. He had used all his strength in that slash just now. If he wanted to kill this Tao Lord expert, he could definitely slash out 1,000,000 times in an instant. It was already so difficult for a Tao Lord expert to withstand one slash, let alone 1,000,000 slashes. He could kill him directly. Moreover, although the Chaos Blade was a Tao Lord level Tao artifact, however, there were no restrictions on Murong Yu's use of it. He only needed to use an extremely small amount of power to activate the Chaos Blade's strongest power. Perhaps this was because Murong Yu had personally upgraded the Chaos Blade. Otherwise, even if he could unleash the power of a Tao Lord, the energy consumption would definitely be terrifying. He wouldn't be able to slash out many times. Murong Yu smiled slightly. Just as he was about to speak, a message talisman passed through the endless void. He grabbed the message talisman with one hand and crushed it. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically. Something happened to Shenzhen. Let's hurry back. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.